Let's go ahead and call to order the Nevada Commission for the Reconstruction of the V&T Railway. We are here in the Carson City Community Center Robert Bob Kroll Boardroom, and it is 9:01 a.m. With that, tomorrow, if I could get a roll call, please.
Chair Peterson,
Present.
Vice Chair Mitchell,
So he will come on at some point, and we'll just mark him present when he arrives on the WebEx.
thank you.
Yes.
Treasurer Cruz, Secretary Hicks,
Here.
Member Schmitter,
Here.
a quorum's present.
Thank you very much. If everybody could please stand, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. All right, at this time, we'll move on to agenda item 4, public comment. If anybody wants to come up and do public comment, please feel free to do so at this time. There is a sign-in sheet in the back of the room. And then I just want to point out that there is late material as well for the public comment. There was something submitted by Carla Wilson, so that is in the back of the room if you'd like to see that. And it was placed in each of the commissioners' seats this morning by Allison, so thank you for that. Any public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 5 for possible action, approval of the minutes of the August 23rd, 2023 meeting. Are there any edits that anybody had? Yes, Stephanie, go ahead.
Yes, under item 13, where it discusses a closed non-meeting to confer, we did have a closed non-meeting at the end. So it says this item did not take place, but it actually did after we adjourned. So we should correct that for the minutes.
Thank you, Stephanie, for that correction. Michelle, do you have anything you want to change on the minutes? You okay? Okay, good, all right. Well, if I could get a motion on the minutes. Go ahead, Stephanie.
I move for approval of the minutes of August 23rd, 2023, with the changes as noted on the record.
Thank you for that motion, Stephanie. Do I have a second?
I second. This is Michelle Schmitter for the record.
Great, thank you. We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll move on to agenda item 6 for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding the V&T Commission Statement of Accounts Payable checks paid August 1st through the 31st, 2023. The V&T Commission will review the invoice listing for accounts payable checks totaling $48,272.31. Leah's not here, so if there are any questions, I'll try to answer accordingly.
David, if I
Yeah,
may.
go ahead. Yeah, please,
Allison Bolton,
Yeah,
I just wanted to provide a brief explanation for the highlighted check under atypical. That was actually the June payment to atypical, never reached our mailbox. We gave it a few months. So we did a stop payment on the June one and they reissued. So that's actually for the prior fiscal year, which is why it's highlighted.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions? Anybody want to make a motion on the checks?
I can. This is Stephanie Hicks for the record. I move to approve the payable checks paid August 1st through 31st, 2023.
Thank you for that motion, Stephanie. Do I have a second?
Michelle Schmitter, I second the motion.
Great, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We will move on to agenda item 7 for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding the V&T Commission's adjusted fiscal year 23-24 budget reports for the period ended August 31st, 2023. In your packet, you have a comparative statement of adjusted revenue totaling $192,110.14 and expenses totaling $159,731.09. Any question? Go ahead, Allison.
Allison Bolton, just one more explanation on this one. Similar to past budget reports, the revenue is through the end of July and the expenses are through the end of August. Due to the timing of when we received the bank statements and were able to turn around the reconciliation to Jennifer, just doesn't quite line up with the timing for posting of commission meetings. So again, that revenue is through the end of July.
Thank you, Allison.
Mhm.
Are there any questions on this budget report? All right, anybody want to make a motion? Oh, it's just going to be the Stephanie show today.
Oh, no.
Oh, you, oh, do you want mine?
I move to approve the V&T Commission's adjusted fiscal year 23-24 budget reports, period ending August 31st, 2023.
Thank you for that motion. Stephanie, do I have a second?
Michelle Schmidt, I second the motion.
Great, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great, motion carries unanimously. With that, we're going to go ahead and move on to Agenda Item 8 for possible action. Discussion of possible action regarding a proposed agreement for on-call inspection services and reports for the US 50 bridge crossing, all culverts along the alignment, tunnel number 2 slopes and ditches, and the Overman embankment with Wood Rogers Incorporated for a not to exceed amount of $5,030 effective through June 30th, 2024. So the breakdown on this, and Gary's here too if there are any questions, but I'll just walk through the breakdown. We've got US Bridge Crossing up to 1,400, all culverts along the alignment up to 1,500, tunnel number 2 up to 1,200. We have slopes and ditches and the Overman embankment up to $500 and one V&T commission meeting per year for a lump sum of $500. So that's how that $5,030 breaks down. But Gary, if you wanna come up, I don't know if Michelle or Stephanie have any questions, but okay, Stephanie does. Okay, great. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary. I actually just have one question, and it may be more for Mihaela. We had conversations previously about our requirements for commercial general liability, and that's under Section 12B of our standard contract form. And I noticed on the Exhibit A, for the scope of services, there is under number 7, there is a paragraph there that talks about total aggregate liability will be $50,000. So I think I'm understanding that this is an exception to our 12B, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Niagos for the record. Based on the insurance that was provided, it looks like it may be an exception, but it's something that would have to ultimately be decided by the commission if you'd like to amend our template to reflect a lower amount than what is explained in subsection 12.
Gary, would you mind addressing that just real quick?
The way I understand it, we wrote the proposal, and in the closing paragraph, it says that we can use our contract or yours. And my understanding is our contract that had that clause is void. We are executing your contract, so that's not an issue.
I was kind of thinking the same thing because this would be an attachment to our contract, so it would be a subordinate document. So even though we're using the short form contract, because it's under 50, that's my understanding too, Mihaela, that our contract sort of is the overarching document. And you guys are okay with that, right? You
Yes.
cover the insurance requirements, Gary?
But,
Okay.
but are we talking about the proof of the certificate of insurance? Maybe I'm misunderstanding what Commissioner Hicks is referencing.
On Exhibit A, it's that paragraph 7, and I guess if we're saying that that's not applicable because we're following our template, then maybe we just need to strike that. Unless it's something
It's not
different.
relevant to the contract. That was an alternative for your consideration, and you chose to use your own contract, which we accepted.
Yeah, so Gary did, this is Dave for the record, but Gary did submit originally like a contract from Wood Rogers, Inc., but I explained that we would need to use our short form contract, right, because this is an under 50K. So he was kind enough to accept the use of our contract. But I do see what you're saying. Maybe what we could do, Mihaela, is on the attachment, Exhibit A, we could just remove, Gary, if you're comfortable with it, just remove 7 from that.
I don't know why you wouldn't strike the entire document. In the last paragraph of the proposal, it says you can execute the contract below or choose a mutually acceptable contract, and you've done that, and it's your contract.
Yeah, so Gary, I agree with you. Maybe we just keep the first part, which actually lays out the scope.
Sure, that's fine. It's
Yeah.
just Exhibit A, that has information, but then Exhibit B has all of the fee schedules. So we're just gonna just keep that page that is the proposal for on-call testing and inspection services, and then we'll remove those last two pages?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
I think,
comfortable
I
with
think
that.
we could do that.
Great.
Michaela, you comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay, Gary, you're okay with that?
Mr.
Okay.
Chair, can I get the speaker to identify
Oh.
himself?
Yeah, Gary, will you identify first and last name just for the record?
Gary
please?
Luce, Wood Rogers Consulting.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. Michelle, you comfortable with that? Okay. Are there any other questions for Gary? Great. Anybody want to make a motion then on this particular contract, noting what we just talked about?
I can do that. I move to approve agreement for on-call inspection services and reports for the US 50 bridge crossing, all culverts along the alignment, tunnel number 2 slopes and ditches, and the Overman embankment with Wood Rogers for a not-to-exceed amount of $5,030 with the removal of Exhibit A and B as submitted, effective through June 30th, 2024.
Thank you for that motion, Stephanie. Do I have
Michelle
a second?
Schmitter, I second the motion.
Great, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Gary. So
Thank
I
you,
will get
Gary.
a packet back to you. We'll get it all figured out and then let you get signatures on your end. So thank you for stepping in to help us out, especially on the bridge inspection fund. So thank you. All right. With that, we will move on to agenda item 9 for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding a proposed revenue sharing agreement with Storytime Photography or Boobug Creations and Photography for photos with Santa at the Eastgate Depot during the 2023 Polar Express train ride event. So we do have two proposals. These are from the last two entities who have done the photography work with Santa during PEX in the past few seasons. And so we have both here, so I think rather than me walk through the proposals, if you guys don't mind, I'd like to have our potential vendors come up. So Dennis, Charlene, I'll let you guys go first, if that's okay with you. And then Laura, we'll have you come up next. So as they're coming up, we have two. I just want to remind everybody, it's a revenue agreement, right? This is a percentage of revenue, right, that we're going to get as a result of the services that they're providing there. So it's not an expenditure agreement, it's a revenue agreement, which is a little different, right, than what we're accustomed to. So just remember to identify yourselves, please, for tomorrow. Yeah, thank you. You'll have to press, there you go. Once it's green, you're good. Green means go.
And I'm good to go. Good morning, everybody. I am Charlene Bello with Boobug's Creation and Photography. To my right is Santa Dennis, and to my left is Chelsea Lavender of Magical Moments Photography. A little bit of background in my proposal. You can't get too lengthy. I have been Mrs. Claus and wife of Santa since he began portraying Santa 8 years ago. I've been photographing Santa for 8 years, and my lead photographer, Chelsea, has been being a photographer for Santa for 10 years. She actually owns her own photography studio in the Carson Mall, successfully photographing Santa, Easter Bunny, the Grinch, amongst other family portraits. Every year we have approximately 15,000 children come through the mall. Families, we are 80% already booked this year, and we're not into October yet, so that's exciting. In addition to that, I'm a mother of 2 beautiful girls, and I've been a Girl Scout leader for 12 years and a Girl Scout for 45 years. One of my special spots is working with people with disabilities, physical and cognitive. My children are both physical and cognitive disabilities. Dennis has been with Polar Express for 6 years. This will be his 7th year, and he is the head Santa Wrangler this year. At least that's what I refer to him as. I've been working closely with the Polar Express casting team, including Carla, Santa Dennis, and Santa Jimmy. So far as the photography itself, we have discussed, because we have such a large group of Santas this year and wanting to give everybody an opportunity to perform, if Boo were to become the Polar Express photographers, we would be rotating from our Santa pool that will be on the Polar Express. We think that's really important. One, all our Santas will be background checked. That's highly important. They'll offer continuity and cohesiveness to what everybody's seeing on the train versus what's in the photography studio. All of our Santas have very, very similar suits. So again, they all look the same, and all of our Santas are real bearded Santas, not accessorized beards and hair. We have our own backdrop. I've read both proposals, and Storytime has requested the commission or the Polar Express provide the backdrop for them. We have our own backdrop, which is why I handed out photos for you. We designed that backdrop back in 2019. It was approved. We worked with Rail Events on it to show a scene similar to what would be in the movie, with the tree, the buildings, the train, the softness of it. So that backdrop was approved back in 2019, as well as I passed out what we used as photo mats back in 2019. Obviously, they would be updated with new information and, of course, the proper year this year. But what we were looking for is something that people could easily slide into an 8x10 frame, put it on their shelf, and not just shove it into a folder and never see it again until Aunt Agnes asked at Christmas time, "Didn't you do this?" They have an option to have their photo mounted right on the photo mat with archival double-sided tape, or they can do their own mounting at home. Let's see. Other than that, we were extremely successful in 2019. Our printer is a sublimation printer. None of those photos can get fingerprints. They're not going to smudge. They're immediately dry as they print out. And we had fun with this. All of our photos get put into a clear sleeve before they go onto the Polar Express to prevent them from cocoa spills. It's just an extra level of protection. We decorate up our area beautifully. We want to create and set the stage for what they're about to experience on the train. It's so magical. They spend an awful lot of money to go on the train to have this experience, and it should start and end, depending on if they're running late and they come to see us after the fact. It should start and end in such a positive manner, and we really enjoyed 2019 and would appreciate being invited back to do 2023.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and Chelsea wanted me to also add in there, as we are 80% capacity already at the mall with appointments, as we did in 2019, we refer people that are not able to make appointments at the mall to come up each night. We kind of guide them in between train times so that they're not necessarily standing in long lines. And part of the revenue then goes back to the V&T. Also, I wanted to add, if 30% is a sticking point, I had proposed 25%. It was a proposal.
Sure.
I put proposals together as a working document to be discussed and negotiated. If 30% is a sticking point, I don't have a problem going to 30%.
Okay. Well, thank you, Charlene. I appreciate you
course.
being here this morning.
I appreciate you having us.
I will open up if there are questions. Go ahead, Stephanie, please.
Stephanie Hicks for the record. So I just had a question as far as like your staffing. So
Of course.
on site in any given night, what does your staffing look like?
We have our photographer and Chelsea obviously is my lead photographer. I am fully trained as well and can step in at a second's notice. Again, I've been photographing Santa for years and years, and I did so back in 2019 up at the Polar as well. We have one person that works with the guests, showing them the photos, printing out the photos. We have a cashier. We also have somebody in line talking to people about the choices that they have, answering questions, helping guide them to get them ready to meet Santa, getting the children excited. One of the things we also do is Santa hands out custom stickers to all the children. Back in 2019, we decided that stickers were the best opportunity as opposed to candy canes because we really didn't want all the wonderful garments inside the depot getting all sticky with sticky little fingers from candy canes. And so we have within the photo area 4 people plus Santa.
Okay. And I think my question kind of stemmed from on your packet, it talked about what V&T Railway should provide. And
Right.
it says a crowd assistant.
Right. Well, basically, there's always somebody at the front door and guiding people where to go and all of that. And I was hoping to work with that person just to have them remind people, don't forget Santa photos are
So
this
it's not
way.
a
We will-"
distinct separate
No, it's not a
position that you
distinct
need
separate
just, okay.
person. It's
that's
just someone
perfect.
that we talk with that, you know, is encouraging. It's good in multiple facets because we're getting more people towards that corner, and that corner can be a little dark. By the way, it's fully decorated. We have a beautiful garland arch that goes over that area. Very welcoming, signing. I try to keep it in unison with what they're doing in the depot. But that person just kind of helps guide people. One of the things I also had put in our proposal is I'd like to know what size photo frames are being ordered this year. I'm proud to say in 2019, we promoted the heck out of the photo frames and the ornaments. I think you guys had about 15 ornaments left. First time ever, every one of the photo frames were sold out. We were cutting pictures down and printing pictures down to size to accommodate the 4x6, the 5x7s, as well as multiple pictures to go in ornaments. So they would purchase a picture, but we would have 4 pictures on there so that they could go and get 4 ornaments. And it worked well because at the registers, they were saying, hey, you need to go get your photos taken for the ornaments or for the pictures, and vice versa. We were sending them out to get the frames, and it was a really mutually beneficial relationship regarding that. Of course.
Okay. Michelle, go ahead. And then I'm just going to excuse myself Clay can't get in. So I'm just going to see what's happening. Okay, but go ahead with your questions, Michelle. Or can you do it? Okay, thank you.
So my question is maybe for Allison, who's walking out.
You stay, I'll go.
Michelle Schmitter for the record. What percentage of ticket buyers actually get a photo? I mean, do we know, is it?
That's a very good question. I don't know the percentage off the top of my head of those that go. The line, there was never quite a line. It moved very quickly the last 2 years.
In 2019 as well.
We did a little bit of a staging so that there was a little bit of anticipation before you actually go in and round the corner, and there he is. It increased. I can say that it increased in 22 versus 21. I can tell you the number of revenue. Do you have that?
Just,
Okay.
you know, in the museum world, we always look at the percent of visitors who purchase in the museum store who come in. sold admission. So I
Yeah.
just wondered if we had a,
Due to the way that the numbers have to be provided to rail events, it's more of a, this is how many in total of this, excuse me, this size of photo that we sold. This is how many in total of this size of photo that we sold. We haven't received a breakdown of per night. So it'd be hard. I could probably run some quick numbers here of an average, total passengers and the run for 22 versus, I don't know, it'd be an interesting number because it's a revenue number that we have to provide, not a number of, if that makes sense.
see, you have
Yeah.
it broken down.
I did. I broke it down so that it was very transparent and not just a lumped number. I can tell you that we had approximately 1,000 families. Those families equated to 2 children to 18. And a lot of times those 18 would be multi-generational families, and we would set different photos up for them, and they would wind up with a flash drive with different, with the grandparents, with mom and dad, just the kids, so on and so forth. And we were able to accomplish that very, very quickly, and that is why I'm putting in that approximately 1,000 family numbers, the flash drive numbers as well, because oftentimes they would just purchase the flash drive as opposed to a photo package. That way they could distribute it between the 18 members that we were taking photos of. So I don't know what 2019 sales were, but approximately 1,000 families came through,
Okay, thank you.
of course.
I think if I'm making an assumption, are you trying to gauge the interest in photos as a whole?
Well, it's a revenue stream, so
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the comparable to the number of people who are buying tickets to the train to who gets their picture taken, or sort of like the hot chocolate sales. Or are those sales or they're free? Okay.
We call it an event amenity, if you will.
Amenity, thank you.
We do have the numbers, the Wi-Fi here. I actually can't access the box account to pull those numbers. I just tried to do it. But I can say kind of across the board from an REI perspective, we are just within a handful of other destinations that do photos with Santa. Because of the commitment to it. And so where it's done successfully is similar how we have it structured here, where we outsource it to another vendor to just handle it all completely. And the other destinations that still do photos with Santa, that's how they do it as well. Because the interest there, because the rising ticket cost to run the Polar Express, and they can get their photo, quote unquote, with Santa on board, a lot of destinations are going away from that structure. But there is a historical expectation with the Carson City Polar Express that there is that designated photo with Santa in a very designated spot, so.
I just want to interrupt for just one quick second to acknowledge Vice Chair Mitchell has joined us, 9:29, Tamar for the record. Clay, are you able to fully hear us?
I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me all right?
We can. That's perfect. So Clay, just to catch you up, we are on agenda item 9, and we're just talking through the Billows photography agreement revenue presentation. Laura will follow with her proposal, but that's where we're at agenda-wise.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Clay. Good to hear your voice. Okay. Did you want to finish anything, Michelle, on your question there? Okay. Everybody's comfortable then? Okay. Okay, great. Super. Clay, I want to give you an opportunity. I know you're just jumping on, so forgive me for putting you on the spot. But do you have any questions on Charlene and Dennis's proposal?
I don't at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, super. Thank you all very much. I'd like to invite Laura to come up then and talk through your proposal. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here again. And then just make sure you identify yourself for the record for tomorrow. Laura, please.
12,000 passengers last year.
Good morning, Laura Main for the record, Storytime Photography. Do I have to hold this down the whole time? Okay, so I'd like to speak to the numbers, the number of people. I did a quick analysis based on per sale. So my average sale was $23 a visit. And so if you look at the numbers that I gave to you in 2021, that would be $1,000 or 1,000 people. And in 2022, that would be 1,217 people based on those numbers if we look at the sales average. So that kind of give you an idea of the number of people that are purchasing photos. I don't know how many ticket holders there are.
10%.
10%. Okay, so we got that. All right, so I'm with Storytime Photography, and I've been doing Santa photos for the last 9 years in various capacities within the community. And I was delighted to have the opportunity to be a part of Polar Express 2 years ago. And for me, it's really 100% about the engagement with the families up there at the railway and the experience with Santa Claus. So as you can see in my proposal, I've really taken the effort to get to know what children are experiencing when they're having a time with Santa Claus. So I've sort of studied the developmental milestones, because what would happen is kids would come in and they'd be really nervous about being with Santa Claus. And I thought there's got to be a way to make this better for them, because I don't want a child to feel terrified when they've had time with Santa Claus. So between coaching up my Santa Clauses and then thinking about, okay, a child who's 2 wants to hold something, so I give them a snowball. And then as they develop, they want to be more playful. So then we have a snowball fight with Santa Claus, and I'm there, I'm like, you know, they're Ginger, and I'll go, let's have a snowball fight with Santa. And then Santa comes and he starts throwing the snowball at me. And so much of the time the kids are walking away and I can hear them look at their parent and go, Mommy, I had a snowball fight with Santa Claus. And so I think that's really important, because when they're coming to Polar Express, I want them to have, you know, all the way through from the beginning to the end, a magical experience. I mean, they've paid money for this ticket. This is family time. People work so hard for what they do to have these type of experiences. So I really take pride in offering that kind of a thing. I'm a local photographer. I have been doing mentor photography at Adams Hub in Carson City, working with Cindy Fentrell over there. Let's see what else. I have experience with V&T the last couple of years, and I feel like I have a lot of momentum going there. So got to know the campus the first year, got to know the flow, and then the second year you can see the number increase. And I think part of that is being able to invite families into that experience when the train is out. So this year my intention is to literally book reserved times while the train is out. Instead of being out in the community, I have a following of people who want my experience for Santas. Instead of saying, hey, I'm at the V&T, come see me. What I really like to do is schedule a time so that they're committed to that and it's not just arbitrary. And I think that'll increase revenue, and I think it'll help the retail sales in the depot as well.
Look, well, go ahead. No, you go first, Allison. Yeah, please. Ladies first.
I know I would ask the question, so I just wanted to address a logistical piece of that. How we handled this the last 2 years was we didn't necessarily advertise it on the V&T side, but from Laura's side, she would advertise, just tell the parking attendant that you're going to Photos with Santa, and we didn't charge parking if they were going to specifically Laura for Photos with Santa. And as she mentioned, we did have people come, they shopped in the retail store, they saw Santa, you know, couldn't necessarily get on the train, and with a waiting list of 5,000 people, it was kind of this extra thing that we did, but we didn't charge them parking from a logistics standpoint. Just thought I'd mention that.
Thank you for that, yeah. And then As you see in my proposal, I was the manager of the JCPenney Portrait Studio, and that was excellent training for me from a sales point of view, learning how to woo the photos, and I've trained my staff how to make that engagement when the parents are viewing their photos. You know, my staff is there going, "Oh, your kid looks so cute. Oh my gosh, you got that shot. I remember that. I remember my child when that happened," and those kinds of things. And so it's a completely positive experience. They don't feel like they're being sold. They feel like, wow, this is wonderful. I've got these great photos, and my staff is recognizing that experience. And so what I do is I have two digital assistants there, and so the workflow goes like this. Family comes in, their stanchions, there's a very specific line. They get to see, it's very transparent, what the packages are going to cost. It's on a board. They get to look right off the bat. And so then they come in, and I'm the photographer. I immediately start to assess the child, assess the family, see what's happening there, how I'm going to build the set, if there's 8 people, 12 people, 14 people. I have professional lighting. And then the Santa's, they're running to Santa, jumping in his lap. We take the photos. We take like 8 to 12 photos. My Santas are trained. It's like, kind of lean in, do one of these. You got the poses down. And then I take the SD card, give it to my digital assistants, and then the families come around. They sit with that digital assistant. They get to see their photos on a screen. They go through those photos one by one. They pick out the packages. They're printed right there. I have two high-speed sublimation printers. Very fast. They get their packages. They get put in a plastic envelope or a flash drive. And it's just wonderful all the way from the beginning to the end. Yep.
Can I jump in with just a couple of quick questions? So,
Sure.
I know that the Billows talked about their sleeve is being approved by REI. Yours is as well, just for
Yes,
my peers to know.
absolutely.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
so you went through the same
The
process.
art and
in
everything has been
2021.
approved,
Okay,
yes.
okay. I just want to get that on the record. And then I just want to make sure, when you're talking about reserve times for people, and Charlene, you guys mentioned about people coming up from the mall. I'm thinking it's the same thing. It's not the people that have a ticket on the
No.
VNT. Okay. Will you come up? I just want to make sure that we're all talking something similar, and then just yeah.
No, I think both of us have done similar items, cross-promoting. We've always had a couple parking spots where they've allowed them to park for a certain amount of time for free, much like I think you did the last 2 years,
Okay.
so that they could come in. And we don't necessarily do reserve times. We do guide them as to the slow times, but the reality of it is whoever holds the ticket takes priority. And the
Understood.
ticket holders paid a lot of money to be up at the Polar Express. And so our clientele coming in from the photography studio is on a first come, first serve basis, but they know that they don't have a necessary reservation. So those that hold tickets are put. A lot of times we found back in 2019 and previous years that the larger families would come in specifically in between trains so that they could have a little bit more time with us juggling seating arrangements.
Thank you. Okay, and then Laura, just to clarify, thank you for that, Charlene. When you're talking about the reserve times, you're talking about outside of when people are there for
Yeah,
the
it's
train.
when the
Yeah,
train
okay.
is completely gone.
Okay.
There is definitely
Perfect.
there is a window about a half an hour where the data shows that people aren't coming in. People will come in a little bit early, but they're not coming in. So that wouldn't be any kind of a conflict at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Tom or Candy, if you could just come up, please, because now we have a lot of change going on. Obviously, Allison and the team will not be there this fall. So I just want to make sure that this isn't going to be a problem for you guys as you see it, because I don't know if you are aware of this, Tom, about the pictures being taken outside of the, folks that are coming in as ticket holders, right? Just want to make sure we're not going to have any issues from your perspective this fall, winter.
I haven't really thought that part through, but
Okay.
just sitting back there, I thought, well, maybe since the Connex is gone and for the backstop for the gift shop, the evening backstop, maybe it might be best to move Santa into the old offices building where the elves are going to be changing. I was just thinking through my mind when you mentioned that, where would the tickets be sold and all that transaction? But yeah, I mean, I just read Carla's email about, that we go to great lengths so that the kids can't see two Santas or
Right.
Santa's in costume and all that. And sometimes it gets violated, but we go to great lengths to protect that. So that would be key for whatever we do at the depot, whether we do it the same place as before or a whole new spot.
Okay. Good. Yeah, thank you. We have a lot of change going on, you guys, and I don't want to create a problem, for us with REI, but I also want to respect the no dual Santa business too, right, in light of having change in the air here for us. So, okay. Laura, I didn't mean to interrupt you. If
No,
you wanna
that's
keep
fine.
going, but yeah, as you were making those comments, I just want to make sure I'm following along with what you were saying.
Yeah,
and
right.
what
We
your
can
needs would be
absolutely
relative to Charlene's.
do what needs to be done. That it's about the Polar Express experience above everything else, and we want to be in line with what that vision is for sure.
Yeah, which I'm 100% for. I mean, this is all about the visitor.
Well, and the
right?
thing
So,
is like what
the
Tom is
kids.
saying would be really effective if we could be over there, because what happens is my Santas have to change their clothing to go to the bathroom, and we do have that time when the train is out, but that's a lot for them. And they're old guys, they're, just to go to the bathroom in a shift, they have to change their clothes because the bathroom is across the way. If we're going to be over there in that area, there is a bathroom in that room, and that would be really wonderful for them.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Dennis, yeah, if you have to come up. Yeah, thank you, Dennis. Yeah, go ahead. So Stephanie has a question, Laura, for you.
So I guess, and maybe this is also for Allison's team, but I noticed and you mentioned in your proposal that the V&T Railway has to provide that approved backdrop. Do we have that currently? So it's not something additional that we have to purchase at this point. It already exists.
That's why I said that, because I yielded that backdrop to them.
Okay.
So
All right.
I knew you guys had it there.
Okay,
And yeah,
perfect.
yep. Thank you for that clarification.
So the funny thing with REI and Warner Brothers likes to change their logo quite often. So something that there's a threshold in which they'll maintain approval on something, and then they will kind of push you to then update it and redo it. So I believe the backdrop that we have currently, they've approved. They've mentioned, yes, it's the old Warner Brothers logo. Eventually, we'll need to replace it, but they understand that these things cost money, and they don't want it to be a hindrance for us. So it is something down the line that you'll have to consider. Same thing with the photo sleeves. If you've got overrun from the year prior, if that logo isn't the right logo, there's a threshold that they're okay with it, but then eventually you will have to update it.
Okay, so can I just follow up on Stephanie's question? So because we're in the last year of our agreement and our NDA with rail events, for either vendor, then they would be required to use what we have, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
they still, even if it is pre-approved, even if they approved it last year, you'll still have to run through the approvals with them.
Okay,
Just to have it of like, this is what our photo sleeve looks like, this is what our,
Okay.
and just specify, we didn't change anything.
yeah.
You approved this prior, but for anytime you're using their brand or their logos, can't talk, goes across the board for all marketing pieces, any social posts, any website, anything across the board, it has to go through them for approval, even if it was priorly approved.
Okay, thank you. Dennis, you just, push the button and identify yourself. Of
Dennis
course.
Billow,
Yeah, thank
also
you.
known as Santa Dennis for the last 7 years. As for the changing into your Santa suit, I know from experience that, I took great lengths and we worked with the other Santas to make sure that you're not seeing the ghost of Christmas past. We don't try and we don't mingle with any of the public till we're in our suits on the train, after the train has left the North Pole. As for the photo room, I would get there 20 minutes early in just straight street clothes, usually with a hood over my head, and I would go in and then I would change into my Santa suit. I'd make sure that I did my business beforehand, and I never left that room the whole entire night until the final train pulled in. We did the last few families that needed to come in and get photos that didn't get there early enough. And I wouldn't leave until the retail area was completely empty of all children and families. So I know and working with the other Santas, they all know what their duty is to follow under my rules for the Polar Express, which, we have set down for many years with working with Carla and Jimmy and the whole Polar Express and the VNT. So just want to throw that in.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, great. Laura, did you have anything else you would
Just,
like?
I agree. My Santas are very sensitive to that suspended reality that has to happen out there at
Sure. No,
the railway.
And I'm not aware of any, issues or anything like that for the past several years. So
Yeah.
I think we're abiding by all the rail events rules, or we would have heard about it, that's for sure. Great. Okay. Clay, I want to give you an opportunity. Do you have any questions for Laura or with anything that's come up? Any question for Charlene or Dennis?
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Actually, the one question I did have, Stephanie took care of. So thank you.
Great. Okay. Go ahead, Michelle. Go ahead, Michelle.
Michelle Schmitter for the record. This is, help me remember Dave and Carla and Tom, or Carla. Candy. Oh my God, I'm looking right at you. Candy and Tom, when we were meeting with Carla, I felt like she had a plan for the whole building that we're now thinking about putting Santa in. And I just want to make sure that we know what she's thinking in terms of space. And maybe Allison can answer if that would be a problem.
I had the same question. I overheard Tom mentioning that the container was moved. So 21 and 22 were a little bit different in terms of spatial. So for 22, we moved the cast out of the container and we put them in the yellow building, or what was formerly the ticketing building, but we kind of turned it into, we called it the office. And in that office, we had that weekend's bells, mugs, cookies, costumes, the food for the kids, restroom, and then a separate office for the team if we needed to have some privacy for our team. That's how we utilized that. The container in the front had all the back stock. So, and it was filled to the brim with the extra mugs for outside of that weekend, the back stock for the retail store, and then I think that filled the entire thing. Part of this came about the electricity to that container. Half of it went out, and so it wasn't realistic for us to put the cast in that container. So we just kind of rethought the whole process as opposed to investing power into a container. So one of the things that we'll run into with there being double the VIP than we've had in years prior, you're going to have double the mugs. So you'll have to identify where those will be kept. So I kind of had the same question of if the container's not there, if the kiddos aren't using the cast room. We had ticketing inside the steel building along with retail. I don't know the plans. I haven't been in the meetings for this year's polar. I can just kind of say what we've done in the past without the container or with, I'm thinking the same thing you are, Michelle, that that space where Santa has previously been may need to be used.
Michelle Schmidt for the record, and the container is off to the side,
Okay.
but you would need a runner because it's not next to the depot. So it's over, yeah.
It is, okay.
We put it down, right, Tom, by the other container as you're
Yes.
coming into the depot, it's on the right. So, Tom, is that why you were thinking perhaps switching this up to the the office or whatever we want to call the other building to the left of the depot itself, maybe? Because that is a good question now. I'm not sure how we're going to deal with that exactly.
Yeah, originally I was gonna use the old Santa room that we weren't gonna occupy for the backstock for the depot and all this stuff. And so, yeah, as things change and I discovered the changes, then, yeah, I was just thinking through my head that maybe it would work that we could make the Santa back there, the bathrooms are back there, Carla's people are back there. Yeah, we'll figure it out somehow, but without the container there, that might hold the large backstock items, that once a week you could bring up, but you need the daily stuff, and, yeah.
Yeah, we'll have just thinking through this, we will have less stock for the retail store this year because we're doing a smaller order, a handful of reasons there, the biggest one being our contracts. So we don't want a ton of extra polar if we weren't to renew. So that's a heavy one there. And of course, budget would be the second. So we won't have as much, but what our team had done is every night they would go into the container and say, okay, we're low on polar bears, we're low on, light up ornaments, whatever it may be, but also trying to, and I know David and I had a conversation about this, eyeing a reserve and not restocking some things as well, because what inevitably will happen is the people that have paid the premium price to ride the week of Christmas, there's no more retail left because it's sold out. So it's a fine dance of making sure that you have enough out there for every guest to have a similar experience and not run out of things by the time you reach December 23rd. So reserving some, restocking some, et cetera. We used a wagon, but I don't know that you could wagon all the way. So I think the commission owns a trailer, which you could potentially trailer from the container to the steel building. There's always been a question of the registration of that one, but if we're just using it right there, we're fine.
Yeah, right, we're not on a public road. or
Yeah,
anything,
so it'd be a non-issue, just having a vehicle to be able to trailer it back and forth, because the mugs are heavy.
Yeah. Does this present a problem for you, Laura, or you, Charlene and Dennis, if we do switch
No.
buildings? No?
No.
Just, come on up, Charlene, yeah. Thank you.
Charlene Bello for the record again. I just wanted to point out, we probably should have an electrician go in and test the smaller office if it is to be relocated. Back in 2019, we had our electrician come in and add additional electrical resources to the photography room to accommodate the printers, the lighting, everything else that needed to run because they were running more lights in the depot and they were doing more registers in the depot back in 2019. They added another hot cocoa dispenser back in 2019. That was drawing additional power. And what was happening is coupled with the photography studio drawing our own power, we were all blowing the circuits every single night and it would go dark on everybody. So we had our electrician come in and add some dedicated power to that back room so that we were not taking power from the rest of the depot. So that would be the only thing, whether it be Laura in the other building or Bubak in the other building, is that we'll need to make sure that it can handle the resources that we're using. Sublimation printers, they do draw a lot of power. It's based off of a heat printing source as opposed to a wet printing source. The lights, they draw power. The flash, they draw power. everything we do up there draws power, and that's why we had our electricians back in 2019 come in and add some additional resources to the depot for us back then. So that would be the only thing I would perhaps think about if
Okay.
you're contemplating moving it. I'm not against or for either way. I'm neutral.
Okay.
She's
But-
completely right, though,
but
that the power
you-
would need to be checked on that building.
Yeah, you are going to want to
Okay.
check on the power because we spent some substantial money back in 2019 to make it so that the depot wasn't going down constantly.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
I think I missed this, and I'm probably admittedly confused. So if Santa's moving to the yellow building, backstock's still in the container down the parking lot, where's Cast? Okay, I'm not the only one confused.
I believe that was my question, because when we,
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question.
when we met with Carla, she
So-
was taking up all that. Yeah.
I think I just want to jump in here. So because this is not something that we've agendized, right? We're unfortunately
Yeah.
we're kind of getting way off into the weeds of how we're gonna manage the staff. So I don't want to. I mean, the item before us is to select from one of the two vendors, and so I want to keep us on point because we're getting into sort of decision making that we didn't agendize. So I want to just let's get back to we have two proposals, and we will work through these things with Tom and Candy and Cheryl and everybody else, if that's okay. Sorry.
Yeah,
it's good discussion.
I'd like to just say I'm totally flexible where Santa is, and Santa will be mindful of staying hidden wherever he is at.
No, that's great. We
Yeah.
appreciate that. All right. Any other questions for Dennis, Charlene? As long as it has to just keep it to the proposals. Clay, anything you want to throw out there? Or not?
I don't think so. I just wanted to confirm that the structure is the same on payment for both proposals. And what I mean by that is one of the proposals talked about the incumbency on us to pay for royalties and those things. And I'm just confirming, if possible, that that's the setup or the arrangement with regardless of who we end up going with.
That is a great question, Clay. This is Allison Bolton. I'll address that. The actual percentage that goes to REI is under an NDA, so we cannot discuss that of what percentage goes to them, but there is a percentage that goes to rail events. And how it's been done in the past is a larger percentage goes to the commission, and then the commission then cuts the check to rail events out of the percentage that we get from the vendor, if that makes sense. Does that answer the
Great.
question?
And so, yeah, so, but just, and so my specific question is, are we anticipating that regardless of the vendor, that's the structure that will be in place?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, we can't deviate, Clay, regardless of who we select, just by virtue of the NDA that we're under with Rail Events, Inc.
Yeah, totally fine. I just, as I said, there was mention of it in one of the proposals and not the other. And so when I'm trying to get an understanding of the economics of the proposals, I just want to make sure that I'm comparing apples to apples.
Understood and agreed. Allison wants to add something to that.
Clay, I don't know that you were actually on the line when Boo Bug first started. So they did address that if the percentage of revenue, sorry, let me back up. They did state on the record that it is negotiable. So the percentage that's listed, it from what I'm understanding, is up for discussion.
Correct. And just to clarify.
Great, thank you for letting
Yeah.
me know.
And Clay, what we're talking about, so in terms of the revenue agreement, it's, the percentage that they're paying to the V&T, and that's what Allison was referring to, because, right, one proposal came in at 25% to the commission, the other was 30%, but the billows indicated that they're open to negotiation on the percentage, but that's just the percentage of what they cut us a check right, as a result of their
Correct.
sales, their photography sales. Has nothing to do with rail events and the
Correct.
NDA for royalties.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I don't know if anybody has a desire for one company. Don't look at me laughing. No, don't look at me. Over the other. I mean, what I heard, at least I think I heard, is there's not a dependence upon us as the commission to have staff or people, other than, yes, somebody, ushering people into the depot, but we are not having to put up any staff or anything like that. So I think that's good that we clarified that. It's just, the percentages, I guess, on the revenue. And I don't know if anybody feels like one company is doing something more differently or than the other from an experience standpoint. So just a couple comments I would make.
This is Stephanie Hicks for the record. I think you guys have made it really hard for us to decide. You both bring a lot to our event, and we're very thankful that you both submitted to be a part of it. I guess my thought is, for the time that I've been on the commission and that we've used Storytime, I've heard nothing but great things. So I kind of tend to think if it's not broke, don't fix it. But I just put that out there on the record.
Is that a motion, Stephanie? Is that what I'm hearing out of you, or?
I can gladly make that into a motion, which would be that I move to approve proposed revenue sharing agreement with Storytime Photography for photos with Santa at the Eastgate Depot during the 2023 Polar Express train ride event.
Thank you for that motion, Stephanie. Do I have a second?
Michelle Schmitter, I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none?
I-
Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
this is
Go ahead,
this
Clay.
is Clay. Yeah, if it's all right. I just want to second the thought that this is I super appreciate the level of detail and the level of passion that went into both of these proposals. I know it's spectacularly unhelpful to not have an opinion one way or the other, but they're both are two really good options, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm happy to go with the pleasure of the board. I think they're both excellent, and I appreciate the quality work that's gone into both of these proposals.
I would agree with all of those comments, and I just wanted to make this a fair process, right? Because obviously, Laura did it the last couple of years. You guys had done it in the years before, and I thought it was important to solicit proposals from both of because I don't know who else was doing it. Maybe years ago it might have been another company, but in the past few years it was these two companies, and I would echo what you all said. I'm grateful for you being here and putting together such wonderful proposals for us to consider. So, and you make it very tough on these guys. They don't like to make the hard decisions. It's difficult for them. No, did I say that on the record? I'm so sorry. I'll take that back. Okay, well, so we have a motion from Stephanie to move forward with Storytime. We have a second. Any other comments, discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So thank you, Laura, and thank you, Charlene, Dennis, Chelsea. We're very appreciative. And you guys are still, it's not like you're not involved, right, in PEX still. So you're stuck, right? You're along for the ride. But many thanks to both of you. So
Okay,
thank you. Thank you, Laura. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, with that, we will go ahead and move on to agenda item number 10 for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding a proposed agreement for the decorative services or decoration services at the East Gate Depot with Celadon Events for a not to exceed amount of $11,400 during the 2023 Polar Express train ride event. So you guys have a proposal in your packet, and it's inclusive of the materials, the labor, transportation accordingly. I know Liz is actually setting up something this morning. And so if there are any questions, we're going to direct them to Allison. Mahela said that would be okay to let those questions go through to Allison. And I guess what I would just say, and if I misspeak, you can correct me, Allison. What you have in your packet is basically a very detailed breakdown of exactly how she arrived at those costs. Again, I felt it was only fair to share the full, proposal with all the decorations that she would propose. And this is inside the depot only. So this is not external. It does not include the train or anything like that. Okay, so it's just the depot only. And, you all can make a decision if you agree you want all the decorations, or you want to give her, I guess, a maximum amount, right? And let her figure out how to decorate accordingly. But I felt it was fair to see what she would propose and to really blow it up, I guess. And Allison, please jump in.
Yeah, I'll just elaborate on that a little bit, just kind of the nature of this type of business. It was hard to, she had to come up with numbers in some way. And so the kind of, I believe the discussion between Liz and David were, you've been doing it for the last 2 years. We'd like to have you back. Could you send over, a bid? So that's kind of where we came to here. Though I've been working with Liz for about 8 years. She's been in business for about 15 or 20 years, give or take. She's got a beautiful warehouse full of all sorts of themed decor. And the way we generally work with her is, hey, here's my budget parameters. Here's kind of the vision. Execute. She's an artist. And so I would, as you're looking at this, I think it's easy to say, well, do we need that or do we need this? I would encourage the commission to maybe identify, okay, this is the budget we'd like to spend, and then allowing the chair to then work with Liz to actually identify what that scope is and what's included underneath that budget, as opposed to, should we pull this tin soldier, or should we pull that ceiling drape? Experts hire experts, and so I would lean on her for that. But as she's not here, it's event season right now, so she has 2 events that she's setting up in South Lake Tahoe right now. I just texted her in case anything comes up. I told her we're on her agenda item, and so I can help address any questions that you guys may have.
Thank you, Allison.
Mhm.
Any question? Go ahead, Stephanie.
So in regards to what was, how the decorations occurred last year, cost-wise, is this an increase from that? Or are we about the same? And is it, initial or the same items essentially?
So it's essentially the same items, but the overall cost increase is going to be in the labor. Just kind of across the board, we have seen an increase in labor. She did add some extra wreaths and things like that. She said there's definitely a handful of items that she can pull to get the budget lower that wouldn't necessarily impact the overall feel or design. Her approach, and really our approach to events, is broad strokes. And the more broad strokes that you can do have the heavier impact. So it might be some of those detailed items that would be removed. Things that would stay would be, drape, ceiling, some things that are more logistical, such as the bistro lights. The last 2 years, we've been very intentional about not using the fluorescent overheads and created an ambiance in that environment. And so some of those things would need to stay, but some smaller things would come off to try and get it down. And again, it's that labor item that has increased at first glance.
One quick question. Last year, she designed something that we own,
Correct.
right? Yeah, okay. So this year, when I spoke to her, we're just sort of renting, I guess, or leasing these items. None of these are proposed that she's creating them or building them and then we own them. I just want to clarify because there was an element to last year's
We
cost,
created
right?
a snow globe photo op it was exterior of the depot, and they did install that for us, made it very secure in case of weather. We didn't know that it was going to be a harsh weather, and they did great. It stayed stationary. So there is currently a non-polar branded snow globe photo op outside the depot that is ours, that is stored. That we would keep. That would be on the commission team or vendors to set that up again, or you could talk to Liz of could we include that in here for you to set it up and make it structural? She attached it to the small shed that we keep supplies in so that it wasn't really going to go anywhere. The one other thing that we go back and forth on is the hexagon stage. We've chatted here and there of can we just buy that hexagon stage to keep it, because it is something that we do need every year, but it's also a storage when we were going to run into spatial issues with rail bikes and that side of things, but that could be an area of negotiation there too. But yes, that's a long answer to the question that you proposed.
No, I just want to remind everybody where things stood last year relative to
Yeah.
this
So
year's
in 21, I think the budget was around 8,000. In 22, it was 10 with the snow globe that we kept. And then you'll see here it's 11.4. But what Liz is good at is, give her a number, give her parameters, and she'll work within that.
Go ahead. Michelle, did you have a question?
I
go
do.
ahead.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
thinking it through in my head. I think that in terms of what you budget for decor for special events, this is in line with that. Are the space heaters, is that something that we rent, or who?
What
do we
space
own?
heaters?
They were yours.
So in terms of heating, which is kind of overarching, there are 3, maybe 4 propane heaters that are exterior. They need their lids replaced due to the high winds that we had last year. The overarching kind of, I don't know the proper term for it, but those need to be replaced. It is an item that you can replace for the exterior propane heaters. Interior, we do have a heater that's run through propane, and it's on a schedule through Comstock Propane. It's located up above where photos with Santa normally are. And so what inevitably happens is where you're staging to get onto the train is never quite warm. There's one small space heater that is sometimes turned on over by the sound booth. And then I don't think we were ever able to use the space heater that we had designated for the retail area. We kept shorting. And so space heaters just pull a lot of power. And so we didn't plug that one in. Beyond that, there's really not heating in the depot.
Okay, so my question was, because you can rent these, does she also have those in her warehouse?
No, I don't believe she's got space heaters to rent. And
And
they pull a
then-
lot of power. So you'd have to identify what lighting you'd want to pull and various things like that, yeah.
And then with her drapes and whatnot, if we were to use heaters,
They're all fire treated, if that's what you're asking. Yeah, all of her draping is fire treated and approved by the fire marshal.
okay, all right, thank you.
Good questions. Go ahead, Michelle. You have one more. You know you do. Go ahead. Don't be shy.
I can't see this, so I'm so sorry I can't.
Do you want
Do you
me to?
want
I
us
can
to
pull it
read her
up.
name
Read you something?
again? What
Yeah.
is the name of the company?
Celadon Events.
Celadon Events.
Yeah, I
So,
can pull it up. Here.
would we be able to negotiate with Celadon Events to definitely include the setup of the snow globe?
Certainly.
100%, yes.
Okay, at this price?
Yeah. I think that's a fair ask. Could ask Liz if
Yes.
she would be willing to do the globe
Okay,
for, include that, make that work within the 80 hours of the labor line
Yes.
item. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she does it over, or historically for the last 2 years. We actually just gave her a key for a handful of days prior to launch. And so, because again, they're artists, they have different body clocks. So they would be in there, at midnight setting up the drape or whatever it may be, because that was just how it landed. So I gave her a key for, a few days for her setup. And, we forgot this. And so they'd run back and forth through Reno. And then she would hand the key back over to me. We did invite them as well to the partner train on opening night. And so we allowed them and their staff to ride on partner night, which is how we were able to get a little bit of the cost down last year.
And I think it's important to note that we don't have the rail bikes in the depot. So I was telling her she's not going to have to work around and over all the,
You still
stuff,
need to
right?
work around general line, so you really
Okay.
can't start in there until general line is done, because kind of going to what our photographers were saying, you want to create this experience of like, oh my goodness, it's the holidays. And so it's the end of October and you're already setting up some Christmas lights, might break that a little
Ah.
bit for people. So I would,
Okay.
I believe the last run's the 22nd or 23rd, 22nd.
Yeah.
So it would be, I would say after the 22nd, then you would start transforming that depot.
After the Sunday, our
Mhm.
last run. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's it. That works for you guys. Okay,
Mhm.
good. Well, that gives them a little bit of extra time,
Mhm.
at least that last week of October to get going. Okay.
And the timing's been different both years. I think year one, we were simultaneously setting up decor and setting out retail. And then last year, we kind of set retail and then they came back around and set decor. Both worked just fine for us. We worked around each other pretty well. So it doesn't really, one doesn't need to happen before the other so that your vendors aren't holding each other up.
Cool. Thank you. Clay, I want to, if you have any questions or comments, I want to give you an opportunity to jump in.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. I think my preference is not to nickel and dime on things. I think I think it's an appropriate ask to see if they can include the setup on the photo op in here. But I would be in favor of moving forward with the proposal as listed.
Oh, that sounded almost like you were getting ready to make a motion then. Wow, that's lovely. Do you want to
Yeah.
formalize that,
Uh,
Vice Chair?
Sure, I'd be
Mitchell?
happy to. Yeah, I'd be happy. I'd be happy to. I move to approve the the proposal by Celadon Events in an amount not to exceed $11,400, and to ask if Celadon can include the setup of photo op as part of that package.
For the snow globe, correct?
Correct.
Yeah,
For
okay.
the snow globe backdrop.
Backdrop. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you for that motion, Clay. Do I have a second?
Michelle Schmitter, I second that motion.
Great, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, motion carries unanimously. Okay, thank you, everybody. Tell Liz, thank you, and I'll follow up with her then about the snow globe business and including that. Okay, with that, let's move on to agenda item 11 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding a proposed agreement for social media services with Omada Marketing for a not to exceed amount of $13,500 at a rate of either $1,000 per month for social media engagement or $1,500 per month for the full marketing package. And this would be effective October 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024. So in your packet, you have the proposal from Regina, and there's two different basically monthly charges, right? I don't know, she's not on. Do you
I
wanna?
was talking, so I
Okay.
just now texted her. I told her I would text her when we were coming up and then
Okay,
got really focused on Liz. So I just texted her, are you on, or can she get on? Haven't received it. She's coming on in one moment.
oh, perfect.
So
okay.
just a little bit of background. We actually subbed out to Regina for the last 2 months, kind of testing out social media with her. And she's been doing a remarkable job. Very little oversight from my part. What she'd send me the approval, I'd say that looks great. Few things of differentiating, what is VTRR versus VTRW. So she went through that learning curve at the beginning, and then beyond that, she's kind of ran with it. So she's been handling both the Facebook and Instagram as a subcontractor under Atypical to help us with those services. I've known Regina for probably 8-9 years or so when she was kind of starting off. And so she recently started her business. You'll notice that the numbers, if you compare to another agency, are quite low. And my answer to that is she's hungry for work, and she's started a new business, and she's just fairly excited to get some good clients on her roster. So She says she's going to jump on here, but if you have any questions, I can try and address them before. I did get permission from her ahead of time if she wasn't available.
Yeah,
I-
so, go ahead, yeah, please.
I have a
Go ahead.
question.
Michelle, then Stephanie.
Thank you. Michelle Schmitter for the record. Did you create a campaign? I mean, as you know, of course, this is my first year going into Polar. Did you create a social media campaign around how we were gonna, of course, we just sold a zillion tickets, but in terms of the photographs, and, you know, the shopping,
For last year?
yes.
The short answer is no. Really, it was me handling it, and so it was a little bit more in the moment. We did a lot of stories last year, kind of, here we are, first train, Santa, how's it going? You know, things like that. So not a strategic plan, no. Since bringing on Regina, she has gone through a process of like, here's the next 2 weeks of what the content looks like. It's an average of 3 posts per day. And partial of why we brought Regina on is because I was having a hard time keeping up with all the deliverables, and so I had to outsource. And so she's been a lot more strategic in that manner than I was leading into Polar. That's your honest answer there.
Yeah, and I don't want to steal Candy's thunder, you know, in terms of the tickets as they go out the door, right? But it's like, boom, you know, I mean, our problem is we don't have enough
Oh, yeah, we don't have to
cars,
market,
right,
yeah. And
ultimately,
Regina is on, sorry.
for the demand.
I was more thinking about the photos since we were just talking about that vendor and
Sure.
shopping if there's even merchandise, but then you say that sells
We
fast.
I worked with Laura. We actually put my kiddos in Santa's lap, and we used those photos for Instagram and Facebook to market that, because clearly I gave permission. So we did do posting. We did do some marketing around it. Was it a strategic plan around it? No, but we did do that. And Regina is on the call.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Hi, Regina, how are you?
Looks like she's muted.
Are you able to unmute yourself, Regina?
I'm texting her.
Okay. Maybe she's lost.
Hi there. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Hi, how are you? If you'll
Hello.
just identify yourself, just because you're coming in
Hi.
only on the phone number.
Hi, yes, this is Regina Flores with Omada Marketing.
Great, thank you for being on. We were just asking a couple of questions that Allison jumped in to answer, but Stephanie has a question. So Stephanie Hicks has a question for you, okay? And thank you for being on. I appreciate you sending the proposal, and thank you for being on the line this morning.
Hi, Regina. I actually, maybe
course,
this
thank
is
you.
more a
Hi.
question for us to discuss as part of the commission and also some background from Allison. But I think I've said before that, you know, we put a lot of money into our marketing, and I understand the needs for that, but I don't always understand who's doing what, and sometimes I feel like we're duplicating a lot of efforts. And so my question on this is more along the lines of, I mean, and maybe through additional discussion, something has changed, but I thought Cheryl was going to do some of our social media and website updates. So are we moving away from that? And are we paying for it twice? Or, you know, I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out is how this
Sure.
came about.
So let me, and you can
Okay.
jump in, but I just want to address the website. So website updates are not a part of this at all, and the plan is unless something changed, but my conversation with Cheryl, she's going to handle everything with the website.
She's been trained on that.
Yeah. So, and I think you guys started on the email side of things at least, so she has an understanding of our system.
I did
Right.
do a training with her on MailChimp, yes.
Yeah.
Which is our e-blast system that we use to distribute
Right.
releases.
But, and so I know where you're going with that, because we did have a conversation about Cheryl handling the website in terms of any updates, not programming, because as you all know, it's sort of its own sort of custom coding, I guess, on the website, right? So we can only do so much without having to go back to the Antos agency for, you know, any substantive changes on the website. So I do expect that Cheryl would handle website updates within reason, right? Short of some sort of programming level stuff, right?
Yeah, she's been given the contact information to Antos Agency, who handles the coding and the more professional.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they're still the maintenance provider, I guess, of the website by virtue of the custom coding on that site. Email marketing, I too thought that Cheryl would take that on, not that we needed to really push something out for Polar, right? Because we sold $600,000 in tickets in 24 hours, right? But moving forward, yeah, we did have that conversation that Cheryl would handle at least the email marketing. Do we use MailChimp or?
We use
Yeah.
MailChimp, and the discussion with Cheryl, which is probably a question in Michelle's head, I can see it right now, is there a calendar or timeline in which you do these e-blasts? And the answer is no. It's definitely been in conscientious of our hours and our times because we are billable hours. So it was more reactive, and we have a message to get out. Let's get the message out. So the most upcoming one would be the invitation for partner night. So I, showed, we actually started doing that together with Cheryl, and I gave her the list from last year so that she can kind of move forward with that. In terms of really the heaviness that we use MailChimp is in the moment, which for the waiting list, I don't know what the process will be this year. If there will be a waiting list, if there will be a communication tool to let that waiting list know that we have an availability, so forth. But we heavily used MailChimp for that. But we're really only looking at 3-4 major e-blasts throughout the year: launch of season, launch of special events, launch of Polar, things like that. So there is a bit of some expertise with MailChimp, but not a ton, if that makes sense.
And then if I can just jump in, Stephanie, to address your concerns about the duplication of efforts. So this is more on the organic side, right, of social media with our accounts, right? And it's different than the contract that we approve for purchase of media. So you've got paid social, and then our digital, if there was to be traditional advertising, that's the Melissa Dietz piece of this, right? And that's from last fiscal year, but that covers us all the way through June 30th of next year. Okay, so Melissa's doing the purchase of
Paid
purchase of
advertising,
paid
yes.
advertising. This is a little different. So this would be like the organic side of managing our platforms, our social media platforms, the Facebook and
There's
Instagram.
a bit of a gray area with the social paid.
Okay.
I was running social paid mainly because of the issues that we're having with Facebook.
With our account.
I passed the project to Regina, and she's working on it to see if we can regain ownership of it.
Okay.
Since we don't have ownership of it, Dietz's team isn't able to get in there to run it through those platforms. So there's a touch of a gray area there. I was running it through the V&T credit card that I had, though. And it was all within the budget means. So
Sure.
things like that could be boosting a post because we're low on staffing for the Polar Express. And so we're going to put $100 underneath this post so that it reaches a higher audience. And so that could fall under a contractor outside of Dietz, or whether it's Regina or Cheryl.
That's a good point. So Regina, that is a good point, and that's nobody's fault. That has to do with that weirdness of the two different Facebook accounts or something. There was one, the legacy one, and then
It's a 10-year-old trying to,
Yeah.
We've talked back and forth with Argentum. Essentially, we can't identify anyone that owns the Meta account that owns our Facebook account. And so to detach our Facebook account from that Meta account, there's no one to permit that. And so basically we have to go to Facebook and prove by notary, meeting minutes, all sorts of different things that we actually own that account and to detach it from that Meta account.
So I guess then that raises a good question, Regina, as far as the paid social, not the actual cost of it, because we can still use I guess it would have to be Cheryl's P card, right? Because we transferring the full authority, from Allison to Cheryl. If you would be open to assisting us with that part of it, so the sort of the management, right, the placement of those paid social ads, not that we're running the cost of the ads through you, because we would use the P card to cover the cost, and that's again covered under a different GL for the actual advertising dollars. That is yeah, so that's a question.
Right.
Would you be open to assisting us with that? Because I think that would be better to sit here.
Yes, of course.
Okay. And the only reason
Yes, since I will already be doing socials, it would
Yeah.
make sense for me to also do the paid side of socials.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm happy to assist with that.
Yeah, and I can say in terms of how we do things, granted, we changed things at Visit Carson City to bring our integrated agency of record into the fold on this, but before this fiscal year, Lydia on my team, she did the paid and the organic on the social. So I would be more inclined to have Regina handle that and let Melissa do our regular display, traditional, those sorts of advertising efforts as we identified with her in that particular contract last fiscal year. So does that help, Stephanie? Like in terms of today, there's technically, I don't think there's any overlap, like no two vendors are doing the same thing as it relates to advertising buys or PR efforts or anything
No,
like
it's
that.
all, we all communicate.
Yeah.
So the left hand's talking to the right hand. As proposed, the only potential crossover would be in number 2, full marketing package, potentially if with the email marketing, as you mentioned, Stephanie, because that was something that we had discussed with Cheryl. That would fall under her her role as kind of captain of the ship. I think where a delineation could be execution in some of these things. So having a media list ready, writing a press release, getting it out. The content is probably another area that we may want to address that could potentially be a hole or not. We had an on-staff graphic designer who would do, all of the graphics for ad campaigns, graphics for social. Regina's been handling that for social. I don't believe graphic design or content creation would fall within Cheryl's scope. So I almost see the two, if you were to go with number 2, working hand in hand, where Cheryl's still, again, captain of the ship, Regina's under Cheryl. So she's the one saying, Regina, we need an email. Can you put it together? She's ultimately approving it, but Regina's putting it together.
Yeah. Regina, could I ask you a question about number 2? Would you be willing to, if we go with the full marketing package, would you consider the inclusion of the paid social within the $1,500 per month?
Yes. So that social is, if we go with package number 1, that includes organic socials.
Mm-hmm.
So the 3 to 4 per week, constant stories, etc. With the package 2, I offered email marketing as well. So like Allison mentioned, I would draft the e-blast, send them over for approval, and I would take care of distributing those. And for paid social, I would just be happy to add that on as well. So any public-facing communications would be included in that, including press releases, as I mentioned in the proposal.
Okay.
Historically speaking, with the V&T Railway, prior to Atypical, there was a contract with an agency. An agency cost is minimum $5,000 a month.
That's what we were paying.
And that's what the V&T was paying. With me, it was per hour, so it was going to change from one month to month. So if I had a really big board relations month and I knew I needed to keep my bill down, marketing just didn't happen. So which helped because we had that paid campaign. I always had that as a safety net. So just kind of like a historical, this would be going back to an agency flat rate, similar how with Cheryl, you went back to a flat rate. So just kind of a different approach than what you've been doing the last 3 years.
Yeah, so, and just to clarify, so what I was, my question to Regina, it sounds like she's on board with this, is under, well, it would be the second proposal. However, I would need to ask Regina to give us a slightly changed, updated version of the proposal just for the inclusion of, however you want to say it, Regina, but managing the paid social media buys, something, or,
One might argue that social media
Sure.
management would be inclusive of it,
yeah.
because it doesn't specify
Yeah,
organic
and
or
I'm happy to send
non-organic.
over.
Okay.
Yeah,
Maybe
good
we
point.
just
I'm
say,
happy to send over an updated
perfect.
version of the proposal that outlines exactly what's going to be included, organic and paid social.
I would prefer that, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just so we're clear, right, in terms of what is all included here, so there's not confusion about duplicitous efforts by the different vendors and, but this, like I said, this
Yeah.
would align, and if Leah was here, I think she'd back me, too, on the VCTC side of things, but it aligns with what we would be doing on a DMO space, I mean, some DMOs, everything is just, all boom, one company, right? But I do like the idea, and it makes sense. If somebody's handling social, they should be handling both aspects of social, so.
Agreed. Yep.
And I would add content creation into number 2 as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Would you be, okay.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Adding paid social and adding content creation
and I-
into package 2.
Yep. Yep. And I do have to, I apologize, but I have to get going in about 5 minutes if you have any other questions for me. Otherwise, you can feel free to email me with any follow-up.
Yeah, definitely. So depending on, what my peers decide they would like to do, I will follow up with you, Regina, and we can work out an updated proposal, that'll be our sort of scope of work as an attachment to the short form contract, so. But thank you for
Okay.
being on and answering all these questions, so really appreciate that. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Okay, the only
Yeah,
other question I have is, so we have some increased costs for Polar for some of the things that we're doing with them. Where we have this transition that we're working through, bringing Cheryl on and transitioning out with Atypical. So budget-wise, are we good with this?
So Allison, in terms of how we built the budget for this year, we had you handling these things at an hourly rate. I don't know what that translates to, and I don't want to put you on the spot either, because, so we've been paying hourly, and it was included in a line item, right, under our contract services for Allison to do these things. But as far as where that's gonna put us relative to the budget, I don't even know if you could estimate if we'd be close at the 1,500. Polar, not to jump all over, but with Polar, I know we still have some things we have to figure out, right? Tom, with you and Candy, and just what that looks like once we get into the season and how that impacts Tom's contract, which will probably come up as an agenda item, I'm thinking at the October or the November meeting, depending on where we get to. So I don't know how to answer that part.
Does it come out of marketing, the marketing bucket? Does it come out of the professional services bucket? Just, to I hate to
Where
approve
it's-
something and we don't know that we.
Sure.
So traditionally, it's been under professional services. You did not spend a lot with me last year on marketing because we were very heavy in Polar Express and in board relations. So, I mean, looking at last fiscal year, you only spent $6,000 total on the organic marketing side of things. But we know we went over budget on the other areas. So
Yeah.
David said exactly what I was going to say. I think the operations and Tom's piece of it's probably the biggest variable to know in terms of where their staffing is going to land. And then if with the management side too of managing Polar and
Right.
those elements.
What I would add too is with Melissa's contract, we have an up to, right? So off the top of my head, I feel like we gave her, it was $100,000 between the point that we started the contract with her through June at a 15% commission, right? So there's nothing that says that we have to spend that whole amount, right? We can, if we need to adjust on the actual media buy side of things, right?
And I did do that earlier in the year when,
Yep.
I think it was in April when we were
Yeah.
working on budgeting, I cut
Right.
her down. So we have a larger number in advertising than the buy that you're running right now.
Correct. And that would allow us to offset for bringing Regina on board to help us with these other pieces. And so I think that's something we could take a look at for sure. And if it looks like we're combined, we're over what taking the 6K plus the buy, we could certainly throttle down on the actual paid advertising side of things. And don't forget too, we are supporting, right, with our own advertising as CTA, and I know VCTC, helps as well. So, I mean, we can support the efforts where if we have to, throttle back on our end, well, we can pick some of that up on the DMO side too.
Well, and would this be a candidate? I don't know the right word for it right now, but to submit to the NCOT grant?
Certainly could be moving forward only.
Yeah, for the
but
next one, yeah.
You're absolutely
For the next cycle.
right. Yeah, this is a great opportunity for a NCOT marketing grant
To get a
yeah.
matching grant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which helps us next year, but
Mhm.
for now, yeah. So, I'm comfortable knowing that we can directly control how much we wish to spend on paid advertising with Melissa and offset to do this. But I think this is an important part of it. Plus, it would be consistent, right? And I'm not faulting Allison, but Allison was only able to jump in where she could.
Admittedly,
because,
it wasn't
yeah,
consistent.
we were throttling
Yeah.
her on the hours, right? And so it's like, up and down. It'd be nice to have some messaging out there. We call it always on, but, so you're sort of always ever present, right, with the visitor and consumer. So,
And I do think professional services under Polar Express, because the way that we built the budget is I was pretty much aligned. I covered Polar Express and professional services and then threw the remainder into operations. And so then things transitioned. I do think professional services with Polar Express will be lower than what's in the budget.
yeah. So I think technically we would be probably having to augment, but if we're showing some savings in one expenditure GL, it kind of like, not necessarily like what we're always having to do, because I feel like we're always adjusting on the expenditure side, but then we're sitting on reserves, and then why can we not tap into the reserve piece? But in this case, we could move from I forget what it is, but the advertising GL or whatever we call it, to the
Advertising.
Professional services to kind of help us keep on budget between the two line items. So
Mm-hmm.
that's my feeling on it. But
I'm more comfortable with that as an option, that we can pull back on the other one if we need to, just because, we already, and the other, expense that we have is the increase in our capital project too. So just making sure, I hate to sound all fiscally responsible, but making sure that we aren't overspending. So I'm comfortable with that.
super. Clay, do you have anything you want to ask? Comments on this one?
No, I'm good to go. I'm supportive of the full marketing proposal with the adjustments as discussed.
Oh, geez. Was that a motion, or you want to formalize that?
Sure. I move
Okay.
to approve the agreement for social media services with Almada Marketing for a not to exceed amount of $13,500, a rate of $1,500 per month for the full marketing package, effective October 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, to include clarification, and to authorize the chair to make clarifications to the final agreement to reflect the inclusion of paid social media and any other clarification needed as discussed on the record.
Yes, and I would just add, Clay, if you would just add the addition of the content creation as a part of your motion. That was the second piece of this.
Very good. So moved.
Okay. Thank you, Clay, for that motion. Do we have a second?
This is Stephanie Hicks. I second.
Thank you, Stephanie. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Regina, for being on the call. I will follow up with you. Thank you, Allison, for addressing the questions as well. This is exciting. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I do, oh, sorry.
Thank
Oh,
you,
go-
everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Allison.
I did pull up what you guys budgeted in advertising, if you guys want to know.
Sure.
So, yeah, so you have 50,000 budgeted in advertising, and right now you only have 20,000 in paid running through the end of October. So you do have to consider, you run a campaign like April through June for Mother's Day and so forth, but you do have money there.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, with that, we will move on to agenda item 12 for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding a declaration of default of Roy Street Properties LLC for failure to pay certain installments provided in the promissory note dated November 30th, 2021, related to a certain property with APN 008-522-15 located in Carson City, Nevada, and authorizing the chair to deliver a declaration of default to the trustee or otherwise initiate the foreclosure proceedings. So just to bring everybody up to speed, following a 7-month delinquency in payment on August 21st, 2023, I did send Roy Street a notice of payment is immediately due and payable and asking that the balance be paid within 7 days. Payment was not received during the required time frame. And the V&T, well, obviously we're going to update on the situation, I guess, with this whole deal. So I don't know, Mihaela, how do you want to tackle this one? Do you want to bring us up to
Mihaela
speed?
Niagos, Deputy District Attorney for the record. There have been some communications with Mr. Street, and Allison may be able to provide you more information. Additionally, Chairperson Peterson and myself were contacted by a realtor that has posted the property for sale on behalf of Mr. Street. And our understanding is that some efforts have been made for him to pay the balance in full. And part of our conversations were him asking either through the realtor or Ms. Bolton directly for a payoff amount. So at some point he indicated that he wanted to pay on Monday or on Tuesday, like yesterday or 2 days ago. And the realtor was asking for information on how to submit the payment. However, since yesterday, we have not heard back. The information that we conveyed to Mr. Street via email is that ultimately it's going to be the commission's decision whether you would like to accept the balance that is due in full, before December when the promissory note had to be paid, because he's already not responded within 10 days as was provided to him in the letter. The letter is dated August 21st. So even if he wanted to make a payment 2 days ago, in conversation with Chairperson Peterson and myself, was that we don't have the authority to accept it past those 10 days. So frankly, I was hoping that he would be present today in person or via Zoom to explain to the commission, what his plan is for the future. So this is what we're presenting to you today. If you'd like, actually, I have just received an email right now from, not from Mr. Street, but from the realtor. He said, can you forward that payoff letter to me as well? We probably won't need to participate as we will be paying the note off. Again, Mr. Street has made no contact with me. He always contacts Ms. Bolton, but I did receive this, and I'm gladly will forward that to him. I don't think there's an issue with that. I think the question for the commission is, would you like to give him a few more days to see if he's going to make that payment, or you find that at this point is no longer necessary and we just go forward with foreclosure?
And just to clarify from Allison Bolton, the communication with Mr. Street was after the 10 days had passed. Chair Peterson had directed me to call him. So I called him, left a message, and a few days later, he did call me back inquiring the amount and how late he was past and what was the payoff. And we went through numbers. And then about 2 days later, he called again, asking for it in writing, which Mihaela provided the information. We emailed and she explained the rest. So that was, the last communication was on Thursday.
And I just like, for the record, I do want to indicate that somebody did sign for the certified, the demand letter that I sent out. Somebody signed for it. He was also emailed. I know that he indicated through his representative commercial real estate attorney that he was not in receipt of the letter initially, but then somehow he did have the letter, right? Which is what I think prompted the other fellow to reach out to us. But I just want to be on the record as having said that I do have that little receipt thing that you get back that somebody signed for it. And so I did what was asked of me from our last commission meeting. So all documents were, properly sent out, and digital copy was emailed as well. And then, Mihaela, is it fair, and should I just want to put the dollar amount that was
Yes,
transmitted to
absolutely.
him? Okay.
I actually wanted to ask you.
Okay.
to do so,
Do
yes.
you want me to
Please.
go ahead and I have it on the computer? So do you want me to go ahead and say what was transmitted?
Yes.
Okay. So yesterday, bless you, we did transmit $117,328.03. So that is the total that he would owe, including the penalties, including the interest then on those payments that he's currently late on. But we also retroactively, we went back to properly look at the note or the loan when he was late, I want to say 3 or 4 other times, right? Since this was done back in November. So the first payment was due January 2022. And for whatever reason, even the initial payments were just slightly less than what was supposed to be paid per month. So we went back and calculated the penalties, the interest, the whole 9 yards. And so that amount, 117,328.03, is what was transmitted to Roy yesterday as far as paying off the note in full. So we're done. Don't have to keep taking this up, every month.
And actually, this is if he makes the payment by October 1st.
That's correct, right? Because then he would be late on the October payment, and then we have to recalculate the penalty and the interest. Yeah, at that, yes. Thank you. Thanks, Mihaela. So, not sure how you wonderful folks feel about this whole thing, but we can certainly, as Mihaela said, we can certainly give him the opportunity to cut us a check, I guess, by the 1st of October. And there's nothing, I guess, Mihaela, if I misspeak, you correct me, but we can certainly bring it back next month if we don't receive a check, right? Same item.
Oh,
right?
definitely.
Yeah.
But
so-
at this point, because we've submitted the notice, you can make a motion and you can authorize David to deliver the notice of foreclosure to the trustee. That will be the next step if a payment is not made by a certain amount. Or, of course, bring it back next month if you choose to do so.
I have a question.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, Clay, go ahead, and then Michelle. Yep.
I'm happy to defer. Go ahead, Michelle, if you got something.
Michelle Schmitter for the record. I was just going to ask Mihaela what exactly, please read the email from the realtor again. It indicated there was a payment coming.
I would like to, just 1 second. I will read you the email that I sent him. Hello, Jesse. Allison Bolton emailed Mr. Street the payoff amount yesterday. It needs to be approved by the commission this morning. Is Mr. Street available to participate in the meeting and address the commission? And I sent that at 10:25 a.m. this morning. And his answer was, can you forward that payoff letter to me as well? We probably won't need to participate as we will be paying the note off. Thank you.
Okay, so no date was given for that. Okay.
Which, in my conversation with Mr. Street, he did indicate that he was borrowing the money, and it was in an escrow account that he was hoping to have available by this Monday in order to pay us before today, but no communication since Thursday.
And as of Friday, I think he wanted to have the payoff amount.
Yes.
But we did not send it to him until yesterday after 5 o'clock. We just wanted to make sure that the amount that we give him is the accurate amount that included late fees and also the interest that was accrued. So that was the reason why I instructed Allison to not send him an amount that we thought was approximate, but we just wanted to make sure it's the correct one.
Yes. And that's what required some extra time, was to go back and determine when he was late. I have 4 payments in my head, but I think it was 4 without looking up the file. But there were 4 previous late payments, and Mihaela advised we need to go back and assess not just the penalty, but then the interest by day, by month, right, on those late payments. So that took a little bit of time to figure that out. So you're welcome. Clay, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is Clay Mitchell for the record. So my initial question is, if we decide to go ahead and issue a notice of default, declaration of default, he can still pay it off anytime before October 1st for the amount that we've given him, and it's a done deal. Is that correct? It's the note's paid, we're done? Or is that amount only reflecting what's due up until this point?
No, that would be the payoff amount. His loan, under the promissory note, he would be done paying December 1st, but the payoff amount that we provided him and he's willing to pay includes November and December. It's the final amount.
Got it. I don't have any patience for continuing this item any further. If he pays it off, then it goes away. I don't see any benefit to putting off delivering a declaration of default at this point. I think it's silly, and it's really beyond reasonable. The way that these payments have come in, I'm in favor of moving forward with that action.
Are you making another motion without making a motion? If you want to make a motion, Clay, go for it.
I'm happy to do that. I move to declare default on Roy Street Properties LLC for failure to pay certain installments provided in the promissory note dated November 30th, 2021, related to a certain property with APN 008-522 located in Carson City, Nevada, and authorize the chair to deliver a declaration of default to the trustee and otherwise initiate the foreclosure proceedings.
Thank you for that motion, Clay. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Mahale, anything you need from us, or I'll just work with you?
I just wanted to make sure. So if he pays by October 1st, then you don't have to
Yeah.
do that.
Yes.
But as of October 1st, if the payment doesn't come through, then
we
will
move
work
forward.
together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Clay, just clarify that was your intention, right?
That is my intention. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Let's move on to agenda item 13 for possible action. Discussion of possible action regarding a draft records retention policy and a strategy for digitizing the V&T Commission's documents. So just bring everybody up to speed in an effort to digitize historical documents of the V&T Commission. Staff was directed to drafted a records retention policy, which will be presented to us now by Allison, and we'll address any next steps as far as outside vendor, anything along those lines, and document shredding. So Allison, can I let you rock and roll?
Yes,
Okay,
of course.
thanks.
Allison Bolton. Just a little bit of additional background because I believe, Michelle, you weren't here when this originally came about. So October of last year, our team kind of started the process of categorizing files, physical files at the office. Our predecessor was a hard copy advocate. We are a digital company, and so everything has, from May of 21 to today, everything's been digitized, but we're really trying to look at the records prior to that. So we compiled everything, identified how many boxes we have that need to be potentially digitized. We did receive a bid from an outside vendor to do that, which would be inclusive of, labeling all of the files, categorizing all of the files, and putting a nice, pretty bow on it. When it came to the meeting itself, Commissioner Wells addressed, well, we can't really identify what needs to be digitized if we don't have a records retention policy that states this needs to be digitized, this needs to be shredded, this can be online, this can be hard copy. So I have the motion in front of me. As the motion was presented, it was I move to approve the hiring of a service to digitize and organize the physical files of the commission, subject to the creation of a records retention policy and a budgetary cap of $6,000 for that digitization. So we held off the company, I believe it's Nevada Blue. We held off Nevada Blue of, hey, we're approved up to $6,000, but I don't know what files to give you yet because we have to get this policy in place. So we essentially took, I think, 6 or 7 different samples of other records retention policies, whether they be government or nonprofit, and kind of compiled it into what you see today as the proposed records retention policy. If there are edits or, once this is approved, then Cheryl would have a kind of a roadmap of this needs to be shredded, this needs to go into the box to go to Nevada Blue. So we've prepped her on what happens after the fact in terms of just, this is a meeting minute, it goes in this box. This is an old receipt, it goes in this box, etc. So I don't know, I have it in front of me, I can pull it up on the screen if we want, but essentially, the purpose, records covered, and then kind of a breakdown of the time period in which we keep these. What was interesting to me was in all of the records retention policies that we reviewed, it didn't necessarily exactly state digital or hard. So I think that's an area of discussion today of, we have piles and piles of hard copies. Do we keep these with this, or is this digital? So that's one area to address. The other is some of these things, for example, financial records lives with Story County. The commission's ultimately responsible for the records, but we don't have a lot of these records. They have it. So there's a little bit of partnership there to identify. I don't know if it's another column here, if we need to say who has the record, if we want to go that detail. When you look at samples of records retention policies, some are very, very detailed and some are not. We went right down the middle. So it's not too high level and it's not too granular. But again, I'm happy to address any changes, questions, conversation. Yes.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Could you bring up the list
I
that
can.
you show?
Ta-da!
Okay, thank you.
Clay, are you able to, I don't know, can you see that right now?
I have the hard copy in
Oh, you
front of
do?
me.
Oh, perfect. Okay, all right. So we're on page 2 is what you want to see, right? Yeah. So we're, okay.
Oh, the
so
list.
Clay,
Sorry.
we're going to be showing page 2 just so you know what we're looking at in the room.
Another category that I did not include here that most records retention policies include is employee documentation and staff documentation. applications, job descriptions, W-2s, things like that. I just didn't include it here, but I fleshed out kind of the vendor category a little bit more because of the nature of the way that the commission is structured.
No, and I think that was appropriate, given the fact that we don't have staff, per se. There are no state of Nevada employees on.
Yeah, didn't want to write it into the
And,
policy.
and I know you have a question, Stephanie, but I did want to say, we did use the state of Nevada records retention policy too as a basis. So when you had all those different versions, yeah,
Got them
Jim
all
was,
right
Jim was a nut when it comes to records retention policies, you can imagine, as the former budget director, and I mean that in a good way, Jim. So we did use how the state of Nevada for state agencies kind of does records retention policy, and I had some familiarity with that just from working for the state too, so.
Jim did provide the samples that we took
Yeah.
from. So those were, he kind of collected, here's some good examples.
Yep.
And passed it off to our team.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
I think that answered the question that I had, but it might be good to note that somewhere in here as far as what specifically, like, I guess I'm assuming and I hope that in looking at the state's policy versus, you said you also looked at some nonprofit policies, we went with whatever was the strictest, right? So that we're making sure we're for sure meeting the state standard. But I know there was a comment about generally that you looked at other policies, but it just might be helpful to call it out specifically, whatever the state of Nevada's record retention policy is, and if there's some number or something, just so it's very clear that's what we're following.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
Michelle has a question, Allison, too.
One other question about, and this is what I wanted to check on the screen, but I'm like trying to move it up.
Oh, sorry. I can move it up.
Gifts and grants, I'm interested in.
So where it is identified?
Yes.
It is under donation/funder records.
Okay, there we go.
Donor list, grant dispersal contracts, grant applications, and donor acknowledgements. Yeah. I'm a nonprofit gal, I know. Yeah.
Do any of you, from your experience with records retention policies, is there anything that you think we didn't cover in here or we need to flush out?
I think great direction for the next steps is under document protection. I just kind of lifted this language from another policy. Documents, hard copy, online, or other media will be stored in a protected environment for the duration of the document retention schedule. Computer backup media will be included. Again, this doesn't specify, say, meeting minutes as an example. Everything's digitized from May of 21 to today. Do we need to keep those hard files? We know that the meeting minutes prior to today need to be digitized, but again, do we keep the hard files? They weren't signed prior to May of 21, the meeting minutes, so
Right.
I don't know. I think more clear direction on 2 steps, right? What has to be filed appropriately, hard copy, and then what needs to be digitized, and I guess a 3rd step, what needs to be shredded, which would be the fall off of what's not included here.
Michelle Schmitter for the record. That's so hard, especially if I put on my museum hat, because you keep everything. Definitely minutes of the organization are pretty critical. So I don't know how we're going to figure that out. And my other question is, in all of these boxes, atypical, how is Nevada Blue going to understand what goes where?
So currently they're categorized
Okay.
based on, and I'm looking at Leah right now, who was more involved in this project. I believe they're categorized into first the buckets that our team was hired in: board relations, assets, marketing, and operations. And there's lots of sticky notes that say, what kind of category it would fall under. And what Nevada Blue does, from my understanding, that they'll scan the document, they'll even keyword it too. So they're living PDFs as opposed to just a straight scan of a flat document. So when you're in Box, you can search something and these files will still come up. I believe they look at what the file is and they will actually label that file according to how we dictate.
Do we have hard copies going back to inception?
No.
Okay.
Hard copies? We've got 2018 in the office. I believe anything prior to 2018 is what is in the refrigeration truck. Is this accurate?
I don't know.
We, the refrigeration truck
We
should
put
probably
those
be.
records on ice.
Yeah, get a hazmat suit on and then you can go into the refrigeration truck. We've kind of deemed them destroyed at this point, just the way in which they were kept. There are some historical files in the red Connex, and by some, I think maybe 3 boxes. Does that sound about right? Old photos, things like that, but anything prior to 2018 is, we've not been able to, right? Is this right? What's in the office and categorized right now?
I can't say yes or no. There might be historical documents in there. I did not fully dive into every document that was in there because of the pause on the record retention policy. Like the next step was then to dive into it to see what was all in there. So we didn't get
We don't
that
have a
far.
complete, there might be some.
Yeah.
It's definitely not a complete since inception.
Yeah, it'd be a here and there document. It would not be a full picture. I think is what you're asking. If everything is there. My guess is not everything is there, but there might be things here or there that date back, but not, the documents do not date back to inception. Does that answer the question?
I mean, I was just wondering if we need to archive in terms of sending it over to the state because we're this body that was created through legislation, correct?
You're absolutely right. And that,
So we had all of the documents from Mike Rowe's office. When I proposed that they come to our office, we indicated we were scanning them and we were only going to keep everything electronically. And at that time, that the commission was fine with that. So we've been working through that process. I think we are really close to being done. With that said, we've been getting rid of the hard copies as we have been scanning everything. But we've kept everything exactly labeled the way he had in his hard copy files. So we have a electronic record of everything that he had for the past 30 years. It does currently. What our hope was once we got it all transferred, then we could create hard drives or something else, figure out where that appropriate place is, but our system's completely backed up.
and if I could just add, I do have a terabit drive from Ken Dorr. The issue with the drive, there's 70 gigabits of data on it, or 70-something gigabits of data. Unfortunately, my attempt to bring the records off onto the H drive, which is what we call it at the city, since we're sharing that with Carson City, I can only get 60-something gig to come off onto the H drive. 10 gigabit worth of folders. It's like it doesn't transfer over,
too big.
right? Yeah, so, and I don't know, some stuff about file names, there may be some restrictions too, perhaps on the IT side of things. Ken was going to try and redo that again because he has, there's all kinds of engineering documents, and then we don't know.
That's where I was going to go next.
Yeah.
So we have this drive from Ken. We also have about 4 filing cabinets, big filing cabinets full of files from Ken. That was not included in the original bid to Nevada Blue under the 6,000 because they came after we did that initial process. Reading through the meeting minutes, he did say that he was willing to help go through those files. The question is of what's on this drive. We don't know. It would be nice to assume that all the hard files are on the drive, but we don't necessarily know if they're completely cross over, or if there's some digital that aren't hard or some hard that aren't digital. So that's a whole other piece.
Yeah, and I just would add, I appreciate what they did coming on board with the digitization of the records from 21 forward. We do have some, digitized records as well from the transition with Elaine, but it's this very small chunk because I received some, what do you call those? Where you wrap them all up in a thing and email you.
Zip
Zip file, zip folder. Sorry, zip folder. But it's probably not, Michelle, what you're looking for. I'm thinking, plans and things of that nature. I know they do exist somewhere.
It could be on this drive from
it could
Ken.
be,
For all you
or in the
know.
filing cabinets,
Or in the
perhaps,
filing
too,
cab-
for
yeah.
those giant CAD drawings or whatever for the depot.
Ken and Mike were very good about keeping records.
Yeah. So but it's hard to say in totality what percentage of everything we actually have in some format without literally going through filing cabinets. And and I'm worried about the other conics given the rodent-related issues in there, and anybody even getting into those boxes and touching stuff, I think would be
Well,
quite
there's
dangerous.
the red Connex, and then there's the refrigeration truck. The
Sorry, the
refrigeration
truck,
truck, blow it up.
Yeah.
The red Connex, those are still, and for what I'm remembering, it was like even pre-commission documentation from what we could tell.
Yeah, it's like old.
Yeah.
Oh. No, you're right. It is good
But
stuff. Yeah.
copies, no originals. It was a lot of copies of things.
Yeah. And we as the CTA, other than what, prior to me coming on board in 2020, we did not have anything that I could find in our records because we went through a whole thing on behalf of the CTA, and I did not come across anything from our old storage facility. So anyway, Clay, did you want to add anything on this? And I'm sorry if I keep forgetting you, but any questions?
No, that's quite all right. I'm comfortable approving the retentions policy. Actually, let me just shortcut this and say I'd like to move to approve the records retention policy as discussed on the record.
Thank you, Clay, for that motion.
And then my caveat, which is not part of the motion, is just realizing that we may need to bring back the digitization issue, seeing as the scope may have crept.
Agreed. Yeah, thank you for that motion, Clay. Do I have a second?
I second.
Ooh, all right. We have a motion and a second.
Can
Any
I-
further discussion?
I just have clarification.
Sure, yeah.
Will there be additional discussion on the hard copies, or are we maintaining hard copies? We're keeping hard copies too?
Good question. Do we need to get a hold of the state folks and just ask them maybe what we're required to hold on the hard copy side of things? Is that an archives
Okay.
question? Is that state NSLA or?
Well, if we want to approach them with taking our hard copies, but as Stephanie indicated, she's already been shredding after they're scanned.
Right.
And museums also like to have scanned documents now because it's easier for the researchers. So
Right.
I could ask them.
Yeah.
I have
Would
to
you-
go over
would
there
you
anyhow. Yep.
Ask. I mean, I guess if we have to, we can amend the policy, depending on.
It's
depending-
it's written vaguely on
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
So I think, again, I just want to make sure that I am clear on the next steps for Cheryl, that at least from what is on here, she can start creating the boxes for Nevada Blue to then digitize. We just don't know what we're going to do with those boxes after the fact. Does that sound right?
I think that's fair because we
Okay.
know we need to start digitizing, the records for sure, and then we can mark, question mark or something like that as far as where it sits on the schedule, right? Because some of these things, as I look at it, 20-year-old grant stuff, if we're required list applications at 7 years, I think it's fair that we don't even need to be digitizing those records, right? Or do you disagree, or you think we do need to digitize?
I think with funding sources and donor records, there should be a copy
Okay,
if you want to shred the original. Because I've had to research files, and I mean, yeah,
so.
it comes up.
Okay, so if that's the case, we're gonna need to bring back the whole agenda item where we allocated the 6, because I think we had, it wasn't originally for 10,000 and it got cut to 6, or it was a budgetary issue at the time. But if we bring records that sit outside of 7 to digitize, that I don't think we were planning on, that's a lot more boxes of hard copy materials.
Yeah, well, with grants specifically, Ken and I believe his daughter were the one that kind of owned grants prior. And I've not seen hard copy. That's all been digital submission on all the grants. The one that we just submitted was a digital submission for the grant, so we don't have a hard copy. It would be a matter of printing it to create a hard copy of it.
Well, we don't, I mean, we just need to keep it if it's digital. I would have changed that 7 to something higher.
But, okay, so we were just following the sort of state of Nevada
Right.
guidelines
and
on that?
They're not
so-
a fundraising institution.
Sure, yeah.
And I'll have to say, also working with them on previous grants, because they do shred fast, they don't have information on if you apply for a grant to the SHPO so many years ago, they don't have it. It's
Right.
up to the organization to show it to them.
Yeah.
So now that we're the organization, I think if we have it digital, that's great, but let's
Okay.
not shred things without,
Okay.
it's like, what if Draco comes back and all that information?
Right.
It's important.
Okay, so with Clay's motion, are we, in the second, are we comfortable? You will take a look into the hard copy piece of this, but are we comfortable? Okay,
Mhm.
all right. Do you want to add anything, Allison? You feel comfortable as far as direction now,
Think so.
hand off to Cheryl?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll attach the
Um,
meeting minutes.
yeah.
In case there's any confusion.
Go ahead, Clay.
Well, if I may, the way that I read the current policy is that absent any specification, it says that physical documents, hard copies, will be destroyed after they've been retained up to. And so I think that I think that if we want to do something different, that's something that we probably need to note at this time. Because the policy, if we adopt it as written in the very last document destruction, hard copy of documents will be destroyed by shredding or fire after they've been retained to the end of the document retention schedule. So if we want to pause that, I'm happy to amend the motion or what have you until we can get very specific on what's needed and what's not. But
Would that make you feel better, Michelle? Well, if we, will you scroll? Oh, perfect. Do you see it, Michelle? Okay.
No, scroll down to with the funding, because you have the grant contract, but then
Which page do you want Allison to go to,
She
Michelle?
wants grants. Property, right here. Right?
so the application we're going to have, so it's electronic. Donor list, the donor acknowledgements. Right, because it's different. You have different buckets here.
Is it over $250? Then you should probably retain it.
Well, and I guess just for clarification, so, I think, and we should double check it, but my understanding was an electronic record was sufficient for records retention. If we're going to keep paper documents, I think our issue becomes what we're going to do with them and where we're going to store them. And the whole reason we were going electronic was because so many of them had been damaged in the locations that we have to store them. So, and maybe that's something we need to flesh out a little bit more in this document, but I think that's the issue. That's the whole reason why we were scanning in the first place, was so many had been destroyed in the Conex boxes, which was our only place for storage. If we have another avenue to keep hard copies, I'm all for it, but I think that was the reason we went the direction we did.
And my issue wasn't on keeping the electronic copies. I just want, if you could just scroll down again, and where you have that grant contract, if you could also add donor contracts. So we're looking at a gift that comes in. And I'll be happy with that being permanent. Sometimes you have like family members come back and say, my parents gave a gift and we don't have a record of that, and we do need to have a record of that. But I think I'm okay with the motion,
With that addition, though, to donations and funder records?
just as a, yeah.
Okay, so Clay, would you mind just restating the motion with the inclusion of the addition of donor contracts as a line item underneath donations and funder records is what Michelle is asking for?
It's already there, wait a second, isn't it?
Oh,
I'm
it's only
live.
there because
I'm live editing.
she's live editing
Oh,
to show,
she's-
just to make sure that's where you wanted it, yeah.
I'm just that efficient.
Go ahead, Clay, sorry.
So, so we are comfortable at this point with a policy that says that we will destroy paper documents that are beyond their specified life, as long as we specify a life for this new line item.
Yes,
E-
but
okay,
in the
so-
meantime, I'm gonna go ask the archive if they'd be interested in them. But I think they would like to have the scanned copies.
Yeah, so okay, but to Stephanie's question, point earlier, where are we going to keep everything when, because she's right, and Michelle, this is before you came on board, right? We were moving in a direction to digitize all of the records because of the space issue to store everything, because we've lost everything in that refrigeration Conex truck thing. So we still have the issue about where are all of the records going to be stored at?
No, it's okay, I'm sorry. I'm a late adopter, so if they're digitized, and I'm okay with them being destroyed after they're digitized.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
So we might just want to change in that section, document destruction at the end there. Maybe we say electronic or hard copy of documents will be destroyed after then they've been retained to the, the reality is electronic we're probably just going to keep, but that, in my mind, reading it the way it is, says I can't scan them and throw them away until, if they're permanent or if they're a 7-year retention, we have to keep them for 7 years, so.
That makes sense. So do you want an additional sentence? Or do
I
you
just
want-
added just exactly how she mentioned it, electronic or
Okay.
hard copy of documents.
So Clay,
D-
there'd be a couple of, yeah.
Doesn't it reference that? But doesn't it reference that in the second sentence under document destruction?
I guess it does. It just, in my mind, when I was reading that, it made me feel like we had to keep hard copy until it's met the retention. So,
Understood. So the question becomes: Do we want to, as part of this policy, have guidance for specifically keeping hard copies, or can we say hard? Are there any that we want to call out and say these are hard copies that we are going to keep no matter what, or are we comfortable saying if it's been digitized, hard copies can go away?
I'm looking at Michelle and she is nodding her head that she's okay with what you just said.
And I do think so if you look at section 4, computer backup media will be included. It's basically saying whatever you have electronically, there will be a backup to it, that it'll be continually backed up. And I read 5 as those backups. So you're first addressing the electronic or the hard copy, the original, then it's addressing the backup copies as referenced in 4.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So Clay, the couple of changes then, that would be to add to if you could restate the motion. Are you comfortable there? Do you understand the 2 changes that we would like to see?
Yeah, so it seems like maybe the simple way to do it is to say hard copies of documents will be destroyed by shredding or fire after after they have been retained until the end of the document retention schedule or digitized.
Oh, even better.
That's great.
What a wordsmith. Love it.
Thanks. Invoices in the mail.
So is the check for payment.
Does that then change?
Put it under professional services.
We're a little short in that line item.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, I just want to make sure I have the motion correctly. Initially, so add the latter part to the first part of the motion, and I'm good.
So Clay's going to restate
Okay.
the motion with the inclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah, the change is to section 4 plus
Okay.
the donations and funder records. He's going to restate his motion with those adjustments or those edits.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Tamar.
Yeah, and I believe that's section 5. Is that correct? It's the last one that we're changing. We're leaving 4 alone.
Yeah, sorry. 4, 5, even better.
Very good.
5 is one more than 4.
Great.
Quick clarification, and I think Stephanie already kind of mentioned it, of we'd probably always keep electronic copies, but by restructuring the sentence, it kind of begs the question of what do we do with the digitization after the retention schedule? So it was basically reading once the schedule had exhausted, then it would be destroyed. Copies would also be destroyed. Now the first sentence is basically talking about the hard copy of documents that'll be destroyed, right, or digitized. You guys following me? Like, do we need to add an extra sentence here about, when the 7 years is up? Are we destroying those? No. Okay. Just want to make sure we're on the same page here. Okay.
Well, so you have or digitization? I thought it was after digitization. Did I mishear what Clay was
Will be destroyed by
proposing?
shredding or after they have been retained until.
Well,
Or.
yeah.
Okay, not after.
Yeah.
Okay, or. Okay.
It's after. Yeah. It's
Okay.
after they've been retained to the end of their life or they've been digitized.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
All right.
But I guess that kind of begs the question on the second sentence there, which is copies of computer backups. I mean, is there any reason for us not to keep those in perpetuity?
Probably not. They just sit
Other
on
than
a terabyte drive.
other than
The cloud.
yeah, other than us just I mean, if we have good organization, it seems like we're not constrained by being overwhelmed, right?
Yeah.
Either by space or by being able to find the things that we need to find.
Agreed.
Well, if that's the case, then potentially that changes the entire the entire retention policy, because we no longer need to have 7 years or 3 years or whatever. It just because we'll be keeping them in perpetuity.
Just leave it as it is, sort of loose. And there are, just to tell you that the Nevada Historical Society has run out of space. And we just had to purchase more, and it's huge. So there may come a time, and at that point, then we would elect to get rid of space. And copies, and this gives us the authority that we can do it. So I think if we just keep it loose, that would be
Sounds good.
best.
Okay.
Right. So to restate my motion is to approve the records retention policy as discussed on the record. Specifically, what we discussed on the record was adding a line item in the donation funder records section that is entitled. Get some help on that.
Oh, it's titled Donations and Funder Records is the section, Clay?
Great. With the duration of
7 years for donor contracts?
7 years.
I'm sorry,
Thank you.
permanent. I'm sorry, permanent. My apologies.
With the duration of permanent, and with the second edit to be to section 5, the document destruction policy, to add at the end of the first sentence, or digitization.
Perfect. Thank you for that motion, Clay. Do you have a second?
Michelle Schmitter, I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this agenda item? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Allison and Leah, for getting this baby through to the finish. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, we will move on to agenda item 14, discussion and possible action regarding proposed revisions and updates to the 2021 through 2023 strategic plan of the V&T Commission. So I'm going to let you take this one, Allison. Okay.
Definitely. At our board retreat in February, we discussed not doing a complete new strategic plan, but updating the schedule as referenced in page 13 and 14 of the current strategic plan. So in your packet, you do have a copy of the original strategic plan that was produced by Linda Ritter. And so what we've done is we've kept the 21, 22, 23 columns to signify when those action items were completed. And then anything that wasn't completed in that time frame was then added into an additional column, 24, 25, 26. And then we did add a column with progress to kind of show where we are in the status of each line item. I don't know if we want to go line by line or if we want to just identify questions, but kind of, as I mentioned, if it's completed, some of these things may not always be complete. For an example, provide a common portal for information for visitors. Okay, that's going to be an ongoing thing. VTRR has updates that we need to continually update on our end and vice versa. So while the initial relationship for some of these things may establish, there's a maintenance piece of it. Another one, look for local businesses to provide food services. We had some great partners at PEX this year with food trucks, and it went over great. So it's marked complete, but again, those relationships need to be maintained moving forward as accordance with the strategic plan. So the colors are maintain their color code with the, I believe it's the strategies and objectives within the plan, and then these are just the tactics within.
Yeah, I think in the spirit of time, I don't want to go through line by line. But I just, again, what we've asked of Allison is to cover through September, with the understanding Sherry takes it from there to get us through the end of the calendar year, and then we will discuss at the board retreat, in late January or early February. So this is, a point in time based on potential departure of atypical. So yeah, if there are any questions for Allison. If not, anyone wants to make a motion to accept what was submitted. And again, it's just point in time, right? So it's not the final, what happened this full calendar year.
This is
Go ahead.
Stephanie Hicks. I move to approve revisions and updates to the 2021 through 2023 strategic plan of the V&T Commission.
Thank you for that motion. Stephanie, do I have a second?
Michelle Schmitter, I second the motion.
Great, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this agenda item? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, motion carries unanimously. Thank you for your work on getting this updated, so appreciate it very much. Okay, with that, we will move on to agenda item 15 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding a proposed mutual termination agreement of contract number FY21-C004 dated May 18th, 2021, entitled Contract for Services of Independent Contractor with Atypical Consulting and Events, and its amendment number 1 dated November 3rd, 2022, and this would be effective September 30th, 2023. Anybody want to comment on this? This is basically relieving Allison and Leah and the team of their duties as our operations coordinator for the V&T in a nutshell.
And Mr. Chairman, I just have one quick comment.
Yes, please.
I just want to take a moment to thank Atypical for the years of work they put into keeping this train on track, and I'm happy to make a motion to approve this termination.
Go for it, Clay.
This is Clay Mitchell for the record. I move to approve mutual termination agreement of contract number fiscal year 21-C004 dated May 18th, 2021, entitled Contract for Services of Independent Contractor with Atypical Consulting and Events, and it's amendment number 1 dated November 3rd, 2022, the contract effective September 30th, 2023.
Thank you for that motion, Clay. Do I have a second?
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you for your work, so. All right. Golly, we're finally on to something that doesn't require a motion and action. Agenda item 16, these are our discussion only monthly non-action items. I'll take up 16A just real quick, and this has to do with looking at our long-term sustainability and perhaps engaging with the Department of Tourism and Cultural Affairs through its Division of Museums and History. I would like to just, it's a quick update. Dan Thielen, who was the museum director here in Carson City, he was promoted to the administrator role with Myron Friedman's resignation. So that whatever we want to call it, transition officially takes place next Monday. So I'm hoping they will go through the process. And Michelle, you probably know more than I do, but to look at replacing Dan on the State Museum Director for NSRM. So I'm just waiting to hear back from Dan as to whether or not we can have some kind of discussion prior to his replacement at the museum or not, or if they'd like to, wait to have the new museum director on board to be a part of a conversation looking forward. So that's my update, but please, Michelle.
Michelle Schmitter for the record. I learned at my last museum meeting that Dan was actually also overseeing the Ely Museum and the Boulder City Museum. So this is very positive for us.
I couldn't agree more because Dan would love to explore this option. So yeah. So I'll obviously provide an update at the next meeting when I know a little bit more, but I don't want to get ahead of anything that's taking place within the department over there. So great. Any questions? Sorry. Okay. 16B, Sherry's not here, so we'll go ahead and skip over that. 16C, Carla's not here. She's traveling. The only thing I would say on the Polar Express front, we're getting the equipment that we need from a sound perspective because of some of those broken pieces and those mic things and transistors and this, that, and the other thing, in addition to getting the audio equipment for the fourth car, right, as well. So that is underway. I don't have anything else to add at this time. So finally, 16D, Eastgate Depot train operations. Candy, Tom, thank you for being so patient and waiting. If anybody wants to come up, thank you. Thank you for being so patient. Hi, Candy. Oh, one more button. Yep.
Okay.
No, that should work. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good morning, Candy Duncan, for the record. I only can tell you about tickets, and I can tell you a lot about tickets. No, it's been really, it was amazing. When they went on sale on the 14th, I think that by early afternoon, all of the VIP private rooms were gone. All of the parlor cars are gone. All of the table cars are gone. And I was just looking, I'm still learning how to read Fair Harbor's reports. And so sometimes when I look at them, I'm not sure what I'm, do you know what the most current report is from Fair Harbor on ticket sales? Okay, good, because you know how to read it. Okay, so I will tell you then that what we have left is Coach. And I was just looking at Coach this morning, and there are a lot fewer Coach days available than there were, but there still are Coach tickets left. We did have a slight glitch in the beginning for some reason, and because of my inexpertise with Fair Harbor, I don't know if it was my error or theirs, but when the tickets first went on sale, it said that all the parking was gone. And so that caused a great deal of confusion with our people, of course. How do I buy a ticket? You tell me I have to pay to park and there's no parking, but I think we've gotten most of that ironed out now, and it looks like that's working fine. I can tell you that we've had, the phones were very steady that whole first 2 or 3 days, but now it's more manageable. It's much more manageable. And now it's just a matter of all learning the system and how to do things like, my daughter's dance recital is that night, so I need to switch it to this night, and doing all of that. And I also wanted to let you know that I know you have a policy of absolutely no cancellations, and I want you to know that in some instances, because of different things, I have been going ahead and doing that. There's just some cases where you just kind of have to do it, but mainly because of the confusion of the first couple days. But now I'm getting a little bit more comfortable with keeping that cancellation policy, because as we go along, the fewer seats there are, it's really not good to cancel them. So anyway, so that's basically what's going on. I have sold 50 seats to the Nevada National Guard families, and they'll be riding on I think it's the 18th of November. And I just met with them up at the depot the other day, and they're really excited. And just kudos to Tom. He is, for the ones that didn't qualify to go on the Polar Express, he's giving them their own train for Candy Cane Express. So I think that's really cool too. So that was
That's
really
awesome.
a nice
Yeah.
thing that we were able to do for the
Thank you
military
both. Yeah.
families.
I've got some
And,
numbers if you want to hear the numbers on Polar.
Yeah.
So we are just under 10,000 passengers sold, so 67% sold out. And we've got a revenue right now of $747,000. That's inclusive of both ticket sales and historical fees.
Thank you.
And then the short line is still selling and still running, and we have, 3 weekends left for the long line. I mean, not the short line, the long line. I end up selling and talking about all the trains, so I get a little confused sometimes. But anyway, and it looks like it's filling up pretty good too for the last 3 weekends. So, and it's been great. No problems that
You're
I want to
kicking
tell you
butt.
about.
No, thank you very much. Yeah, to both of you, thank you. And Tom, thank you for everything you're coordinating with the repairs at the depot. I really appreciate that as well. So I know they're slow, but yeah, if you want to, yeah, please.
I'd
Thank
like
you,
to maybe have some help on maybe what my function is down there a little more. I mean,
Sure.
just kind of doing things that come up, but it'd be help me to plan out. We're going to meet with some of the returning employees this Saturday, and
Okay,
you know,
sounds good. Think we could do that, yes. Okay. You guys have anything else you want to add? Any questions for Candy or Tom? Okay, thank you. Appreciate everything you guys are doing to pull off the rest of the season in PEX. All right, we will move on to 16E, our next meeting right here in this room, October 25th, 2023, 9 a.m. Mark your calendars. It's going to be a beauty. We'll move on to 17. Commissioner comments or announcements and requests for information. Anybody have anything they want to add? Go ahead, Michelle.
Michelle Schmitter for the record. I just wanted to mention that I did do the post-construction walk at
Oh,
the depot, and it looks good. You could, I was a little concerned about the turn when you start into that parking area that's in the center. We might need to put some additional signage because I came up and I was like heading into the parking lot instead of going that way. There's an arrow. They also needed to mark the locations of the parking areas with a reflector, and in removing those, there's some holes still. So I asked Asensi if they could fill them, and they agreed to do that reluctantly. And there's some, it's because of the nature of what was put down, it sheds. There's stones in that, so we might need to do a sweep. But I did see the location of where Tom moved the box. Does that have electrical out to it? The
Is there
container?
electrical? I
Yeah.
don't think so.
Electrical.
No.
Okay. Then the other question was, it's very dark up there, as we know. Do we rent lights? Do we have lights?
During Polar?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's
And
those big portable
Who's on that?
lights.
Who coordinates that? And then also a parking lot attendant, because it's going to be kind of important this time, especially with the middle section.
We have, to answer your question, we have had parking attendants, yes. And the lights, like those portable things that you fold up and they fold out.
Right.
And that covers the parking lot up there to help.
But that's not your job, is it?
No, it scared me. I was there when Tom was cranking those up, and it looked rather difficult, quite frankly. But yeah, no, no. But we will get all that worked out for Polar. Yeah.
It's been through donation with Granite Construction. So as a trade for partner night, they get tickets to partner night, and that's traditionally fallen under the operations bucket to facilitate that donation. But it is on the commission to refuel those with diesel if they run low on diesel for the lighting. And then for the last 2 years, we've had 2 attendants out there so that they can break each other and that they have kind of a buddy.
Who staffs those attendants?
Traditionally, it's been under the operations vendor.
Okay. And then on your partner list, and I know this is it for you, but I guess I'll say it on the record that we should add SNC to that list.
We handed the partner list over to Sherry last Friday and pulled Commission Chair Peterson in on that to look it over and make sure that all the contact names, because we've had some transition in Board of Supervisors, various contacts, just to make sure that it's accurate before that gets put into the invitations. Yes.
Yeah, and I also, only because peer pressure, but RTT, Reno Tahoe Territory members, getting something out to them as well as a part of that. So I was asked by many of those folks about the media partner night. So I'm working on that. But I'll have to take it back up when Sherry gets back with her. So, okay. Clay or Stephanie, anything you want to add? Clay?
No comments. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Thank you to Atypical for everything you guys have done for us. So thank you very much. It's still not the 30th, so I'm going to be hitting you up for stuff through Saturday. Oh, you're out of office, are you? Oh, interesting. Huh. We'll talk about that later, Leah. All right, we'll move on to agenda item 18, public comment. So anybody want to make a public comment at this time? Seeing none, if I could get a motion to adjourn, that would be lovely. Nobody? You want to keep going? You want to break the noon hour?
Well, I can do this one. Michelle Schmitter for the record. I move that we adjourn the meeting.
We are adjourned. Thank you.